And we are live. Hi, everyone. Number one Marmaduke fan here. Today, I am joined by the king of tomboy appreciators, Deputy Russ Art, a.k.a. Zach T. Garman. Say hi,
Hello.
Deputy.
Hi there.
Well, okay, well, this is fun for me. Unbreakable Iron Ranger. I backed the first book. I really enjoyed it. I think I did one of my infamous stream of consciousness iPhone reviews. And you are backing Volume 2, Unbreakable Iron Ranger, Forged in Fire. So just tell us a little bit about how the
Oh, well,
campaign is going.
it's not forged in fire. It's forced into fire. This is
Forced
actually,
into fire.
yeah. So immediately a thing that you probably know or probably already done. I don't know. You've been reading I remember you saying you've been reading the comic for a bit. So fun fact: the name "Forced into Fire" is actually another song reference. Both "Heart of Gold" and "Forced into Fire" are both song references and stuff. But like "Forced into Fire" is a reference to the band For Today, which is a Christian metal band and such. But I was actually this was actually a name I was having a hard time making up with. But I'll talk about that later. Sorry, sorry.
I do love the consistent musical references vibe. It's very Hirohiko Araki's JoJo Bizarre Adventure, right? Like
Oh no, yeah,
you
he
bring it.
really ruined my mind on that. Like, but it was more like a click for me because growing up, I grew up with a lot of like music, both classic rock, country, jazz, and things like that, and started branching off into other genres. My family doesn't listen to like rap and metal and things like that. But yeah, it just that stuff has been kind of in my life since I was like a little baby and all that.
And since I brought up the anime reference, like one of the things overall I like in your work is like I see the JoJo homage, I see Gurren Lagann and Studio Gainax inspiration, but you don't just ape manga. Like you also have a lot of Western influences and American country influences too. So you're really doing your own unique mashup. Like talk
Oh
a
no,
bit
yeah.
about your inspiration pool. What are the kinds of things that inspired your imagination when you were starting to work out in webcomics?
So basically, the biggest thing that honestly kicked me off into doing webcomics officially was One Punch Man. And I know there's like in the manga nowadays, not the webcomic, but the manga has kind of hit a nosedive. They took way too many creative liberties to say. But still, it's one of my favorite series, at least the webcomic. The manga still got great art, but they diverted from the webcomic when they really shouldn't because the story was great. But anyway, it was One Punch Man, just more seeing like this webcomic that was credibly drawn. It was just meant more like as a side project for one while he was working on Mob Psycho 100. But just seeing it blow up and being made by this guy, being given art by this really talented mangaka, Yusuke Murata, it was just pretty cool to see. And it was one of those things that made me really want to actually buckle down and do my comic. And then what also helped out was Webtoons had this comic contest going on, which was hosted by them and also Stan Lee. And I was also like, shit, I want to meet Stan Lee. And that's what led to all this, basically. Well, partly. There's a lot more, but like with this, the webcomic stuff, it was because of One Punch Man in that Webtoons webcomic contest.
Yeah, and you're doing okay on Webtoons. You've got like 3,000 followers. I think you've had like 300,000 hits on Unbreakable Iron Ranger. So, like, when did you first notice you were starting to go viral? Was it early on in the process, or did things kind of like pick up
Well,
steam halfway through?
I don't know if I would consider UIR viral by other standards because there's stuff that I've made that's been way more viral and memorable than my comic. I mean, you mentioned the Tomboy thing. Like there was the whole Tomboy Mandalorian thing. There was like Daisy Eternal and a bunch of other stupid meme shit that I've done, like Freddy versus Jetstream Sam and things like that. That's more of what people know me as.
It's
But
always
then
the shit posts. It's
it,
always
it
the
really
shit
is.
post that
I don't.
people.
I really don't mind it because I do. It's something I really do enjoy. It's something I really do enjoy because I'm not doing it just because like, oh, I just want to do this as a joke. I want to implement the style I have and take a shit post and just actually make it really cool because that's the design philosophy that I had from like One Punch Man because you had Yusuke Murata taking all these meant to be just really simple designs and it was just like, okay, let's go ham with this. But that's what I like. But anyway, back to what I was saying. Uh, shoot, with the viral thing, I would say with Freak of Nature. Well, sorry, it was at one point called Freak of Nature, but with
Right, kind of
Unbreakable
like
Iron
this, the
Ranger.
season zero, yeah. And there's the archives of that, by the way, are still up on Webtoons. But is
Yeah,
that
because I
technically
didn't.
considered non-canon?
Yeah, it really is non-canon officially, but I still keep it up because I like having some familiarity that's unfamiliar, but I like looking back on it because it was like the nexus point. So fun fact about that, FON Origins, Freaking Nature Origins, that was actually the third reboot I did of this whole project. There has been about 7 or 8 of these resets I had until the more recent version of Unbreakable Iron Ranger. And even then, it was still called Freak of Nature in 2018. But uh, this was this is a project I was really passionate about, but had heavy, heavy perfectionist issues with. Like I didn't feel like I was doing enough. I felt like, oh no, I'm hitting a rut. I need to redo this again. And it just kept happening and happening and happening. And it wasn't until remade FON Origins because I was like, okay, so what worked here? Because looking back, I was like, I mean, this isn't real. Because looking back, it was definitely not the most well written, but there was more passion put in VR. There was more stuff with the characters that I had more fun with. And so I just wanted to go back, redo things with improved art so that I could see, okay, what was it that people liked about this? Because it wasn't necessarily the most well-known thing, but it was definitely the best iteration. People loved that more. So I wanted to go back and explore that. And that led to another remake-ish thing. It was more of like a pilot test of compressing that whole horror show escape arc into one thing. And that's was my next goal is basically I want to compile this whole horror show escape into just one episode and just trim the fat. And that's what led to the pilot thing. And in that pilot, and especially early on with Unbreakable Iron Ranger, if you've seen Samurai Jack, you would know that there's a lot of still establishing shots, and there still kind of is here and there, but it's definitely gotten a bit more rushed. Unfortunately, I want to bring more back of that stillness for Crips and Cowboys. But anyway, I basically wanted to try to like slow my mind down and just focus more on like what is needed for this, because there was a lot of ideas I was trying to do, and the whole idea for it was basically limit yourself, and that sounds stupid, but limit yourself so you can figure out what are the best ideas to keep in, basically. And what happened was early on, every episode I had planned was just going to be the equivalent of like 20 pages and 21 pages roughly. But I'd had that goal for myself because I was like, okay, I just need to focus on what I want to get out there so I could keep working on stuff. And then episode 3 came around, I started doing 30 pages and started extending and things like that. But the whole idea with this current iteration of Unbreakable Iron Ranger was I wanted to get better production. Still, I've fallen off of that. But basically, the whole idea was I didn't want to reset. I wanted to feel more comfortable and felt like I was actually getting ideas that I want to get out. And it led to some good things. Looking back, though, there's definitely some pacing issues. But at this point, it's fine. At this point, this whole UIR has definitely been more of like, at the end of the day, more of a passion project and more of an artistic evolution. At the end of the day, I just repeat myself saying,
yeah.
but
Well,
you know what I mean.
I have some thoughts on that because I kind of noticed when I just got to the end of season 1, and you talk about in season 2 about you're the kind of artist who thinks a lot about your work. It's sort of like you do the editorial phase after you get the first draft out, I think Tolkien would famously just type, and when you get stuck, you just throw out everything and go back to page 1 and start typing again, right? What really struck me about episode 0 and episode 1 of UIR is so you have like this backstory idea that you're kind of reworking or reimagining, and you thrust us right into the middle of it. Like he wakes up on the operating table. He's a cyborg. His grandpa has operated on him, and we've got to get out. We got to escape from this place, right? So you're asking your readers, you're expecting a lot of your readers, but you're also guiding us. So it's enough to know that Styx is the bad guy. It's enough to know that Ben's our hero, right? And what I love about it is an immediate thrust into action without a long buildup. It's sort of like, oh great, I got to get my cat out of here. It's sort of like, it's the in media res technique, but you kind of arrived at it through your revision process.
That's what I was. Sorry.
No, and when we meet Ironworks, we establish a lot of lore in just the first chapter, and I don't think it's too much. Like you're giving us a lot to chew on lore wise, but everything that's basically established in chapter 1 has payoffs in later chapters. So that was the stuff that really struck me about the escape from horror show.
And the funny thing about that is like What you're seeing now is more like the finalized thing. There's been a lot of like while I've been working, I've been doing like little mini retcons here and there. And this is technically the re-released version as full webtoon format. I originally just posted it actual page by page, but that kind of got hard to read on mobile devices, and I learned that a lot more people were reading on mobile devices, and it sucks. But I catered to more the vertical version, but at least it turned out better than I thought. But as I was working on editing things, there were some things like originally Fleetwood was originally still alive, and Ben knew he was alive. And I was like, later down the line, I was like, I don't know, that doesn't seem as very interesting. And since I didn't have that big of a falling with this current incarnation, I was like, okay, let me just go back and edit this real quick. And that's partly where that episode 0 was, because you can tell that the style is completely different from episode 1, because episode 0 has more similarities to my current style. And that's because it was made in about like, I think it was like the prologue there was made like 2019, 2020, something like that. And I just put that in there because originally it was just more like a disclaimer saying, hey, this is the Webtoons version of all that, like the vertical format. And then I changed it to just be more like a proper episode 0. And that's what happened. But that was added in there just to add a little bit more interaction between Ben and Fleetwood, because I didn't want Fleetwood to just be a character that just was suddenly there and then just dies. I wanted there to be more of a heart-to-heart moment between the two of them so that you can know more of the stakes of what happens later. When, you know, like you think Ben's grandpa is dead, and the weight of Ben feeling like, you know, have a bit of survivor's guilt there. Like there was supposed to be the both of them getting out there, and he feels like he messed up. And for Ben, and that adds more to whole Ben's character within this story. But also, like, part of the reason why I didn't explain any of Ben's backstory immediately is because, like I said, I didn't say anything yet. That's nervous tick. But more so because there's more to it that will end up making more sense with some of the little pieces that have been revealed within the comic. I'm really excited. It's just I can't say anything yet until like I'm finished up with episode 14, which I'm about to do. But it's going to be a fun reveal, I hope.
No scoops for my channel. That's okay. I want to call attention to, if I can find the scene, when Gramps tosses the sheriff's badge to Ben. I thought that was a really well handled scene. So you're integrating your Christian faith, because on the sheriff's badge, we've got 2 Timothy 4:7, so a Bible verse. But the Bible verse, I think it really connects well with the characters, because I think Timothy's written by St. Paul to Timothy, who's a younger guy. So, and it's literally an older generation grandpa passing a badge, passing something on to the younger generation, and giving Ben this mission that I want you to be responsible for protecting people from the forces of evil.
And originally it wasn't that. Not to say there wasn't a Bible verse to begin with, but the problem was the original Bible verse I had there was a little bit more generic. I don't mean this in a mean way, but it was Proverbs 3 verses 5-6. It was just, you know, trust in the Lord and heart, lean on his understanding and all that. And while that's a good memory verse, but it didn't really apply to the series as a whole. I don't mean that in a mean way, but it's kind of like just trust in the Lord and stuff. And it can end up being interpreted as very ham-fisted, and I didn't want to do that with like Ben's faith. Like I didn't want to do that with the whole how I integrated my faith and things like that into the series, because at the end of the day, I know there's people that aren't part of my faith that are wanting to read this, and I want to have this is basically my heart and soul and stuff essentially for this series. But I also want to make sure that people can connect, because there's a problem sometimes whenever you do religious work. And it's a very easy pit to fall into. It's an easy pit to fall into whenever you're writing anything moral wise or politics wise or anything like that. It's basically just you think, oh, well, all I got to do is just tell a good message and stuff. And you fall into that trap and think that's all you got to do. But then you realize pretty quick that it's not as easy. It can kind of feel like you're just putting in a big billboard in a bunch of beautiful scenery, and it's just like, here's go to McDonald's or something like that, when you're just looking at this beautiful valley. It just like there's a bunch of cows that are just peacefully tended to, and there's a sign that just says, hey, hamburgers. Basically sound like that. I hope that makes sense. But basically,
and you lampshaded it a little bit. I think Ben later comments, look, I'm a Christian Texan who carries a big iron. I'm a walking stereotype. Like you're aware of it, but it fits. It fits with the characters, and I never felt like, oh, this is hitting me in the face with a frying pan. It makes sense for a kid from Texas.
I wanted this to be more about like Ben, and with the way I wanted to portray the faith, I didn't want it just to be Ben forcing his faith onto other people. It was more like his own battle with himself and his faith, because at the time when I was first writing it, that was something I was kind of struggling with too, as it was growing up and things like that. I was faithful, but also at the same time, once you start growing up, you this always happens. You're going to be challenged by the world and stuff. You're going to try to figure out who you are in the world. I think, and that's ultimately what I want this story to be. And I want to make sure it was written in a way that even if you weren't Christian, you got the idea, because everybody struggles once they enter adulthood. Like they think they know everything. They think they have a good grip on the world, and then the rug's pulled out from underneath them, and they're quickly challenged and forced, thrown into the wolves, essentially. And either they have the help or they have the good foundation, or sometimes even that with that foundation, it can end up causing they could still end up getting screwed over, or stuff like that happens. And I'm not saying like my bad life was just that awful and stuff, but just growing up, because I was been a recluse all my life, it was basically a shell shock to my system trying to integrate more into the world of being an adult and such. And it was definitely harder for me than others. But I wanted to do with Ben's character, it basically is more about just him growing more confidence in himself, so that way he can continue to do what he needs to do. And that's why I chose the second Timothy verse, because it's more fitting with the story, and especially about Ben having an unbreakable iron will and all that stuff. But it fits in because it's more just like, you're going to finish this. If you're going to do the race, you finish it. That's the whole point of it. And I want it to be more of a big thing for Ben, and that to be the message. Like, I have fought the fight. I've run the race, and basically, like, I have done this, and I'm going to keep doing this. It's a message of perseverance and determination.
And I want to, I'm just going to gush about this. So another thing I appreciate is Ben is strong, but he's very fragile in his own universe. So his first big fight is with Ironworks, and Ironworks completely overpowers him. And there's this really subtle angle to Ben where he can heal himself, but he obviously can't heal metal. So it's like his strength is his weakness.
Oh yeah,
really good Iron Man vibes, where Iron Man has this power, but the power is also, it's almost like literally he's an amputee, right? So there's this kind of like sad element of he's been a broken man who's had to restore himself, and that restoration process has in some ways made him stronger, but it's lingering with him. So I think you do subtle emotional sadness really well.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I loved about it. Like with Ben's regeneration ability, probably a lot of people, since they know that I like JoJo or could guess the JoJo references, they probably think, oh, that is regeneration ability. That's based off of a freaking crazy diamond. You could probably see in like the diamond effects. He
does Dora, yeah,
the thing. But I freaking love part 4 of JoJo, and Josuke heavily influenced Ben, along with other characters like Vasha Stampede and such. But with Ben's aura, I really love the fact that Crazy Diamond, because in the series, the stands really represent the user in a way, and Josuke's power to heal others but unable to heal himself, because he wants to be able to heal others, but he doesn't allow for himself to have a moment of pause and stuff. He's always about like helping others, even if it costs himself. And that's why Crazy Diamond's not able to help him, but he can help everybody else. And for Ben, I wanted there to be that catch, because I didn't want it to be totally impervious. Because it gets boring when your main character who has this amazing ability does not eat shit on occasion. Your characters do need to eat shit. I don't mean that in a mean way, but it's like your characters need to get thrown through the grinder, and I want Ben to be able to do that and go up against these guys like Barry and Ironworks and Highway Jack, but still come out of it alive in a sensible way, but still have to struggle and be cautious. And that's why I gave him the metal limbs, because they do give him the advantage of, they give him all this, they give him a boost in strength and such. They allow him to run faster. However, if they break, there's not much he can do. And that's pretty much, he's a glass cannon, essentially. If those things break, he's not able to do much.
We're looking at episode 4. So I think between episode 4 and 5 is where the transition happens. Between episode 4, you were on Webtoons, I mean, not in the episode counting is different than the Webtoon counting. But around episode 4, you transition. I didn't think the transition was that harsh, actually, because like starting number 5, that's your older style. And I think towards the end of 5 and in number 6, we start seeing you experiment with color more. So you're using color. Not dynamically, your art's dynamic. Your color is very like symbolic. So you'll have like Ben will suddenly be bright green or bright red to maybe suggest an emotional shift or an emotional change. Is that maybe
Yeah.
more like Studio Gynax inspiration? Talk about color theory a little bit.
No, yeah, well, actually, that goes back to more to JoJo and stuff because, like in the JoJo anime, when I was watching, because what happened around this time, I remember I was studying more on color theory and JoJo a little bit more because I love the color swaps and things like that. But the reason why the color swaps are hit so well, it's not just because they're just wow, these are great, but also because they manage to subtly hint at important moments, like. In part two's anime, like whenever a big color swap moment happened, it would typically happen when Joseph did his famous little "I know what you're going to say" a little bit, and it was meant to be a moment where like the character that JoJo predicted the lines they were going to say, they would be in disarray about it, and that's when the shock would happen. But then later on, great example in part three, there is the fight between Kakyoin and JoJo early on, but early on they're like these specific colors. And Kakyoin goes about like how the winner is the victor, the winner is the one who's just and stuff. The loser is evil. And it's when Jotaro is on the line of about to be defeated. And they already have these colors set. And then Jotaro is like, really, the loser's evil. And then once Jotaro starts taking the advantage, then the colors swap essentially, and reflecting that the sides have changed. And it like looks like this character is more just. And it's great moments like that. And then just other little subtle details like that within the color swaps and stuff. And no one really talks about that specific scene, but I love that scene specifically because it reflects why the color theory works so well in JoJo, because it's not just for the pretty colors and because Araki is known to color swap a lot, although that is part of the why, but they also use it to actually influence the emotional tone of the scene. And that's why I wanted to make sure I added that in. I need to do that more. I kind of stopped doing that because I went more of a manga route just to make sure the production was good around episode 13. Like halfway between episode 13, I stopped doing the color swaps because I was not able to color as much, partly because of my job that was going on. Retail really eats at you a bit, and I want to get back to that at least for episode 15 and 16 because those are going to be some very emotional episodes there. But yeah, the color theory comes more from JoJo. Also, I saw someone mention in the comments and stuff, but yeah, yes, Ben is heavily influenced by Soul Bad Guy. I got more into Guilty Gear in 2019, but even still, once I started getting to Guilty Gear, Ben definitely took on more of like a Soul Bad Guy kind of look and vibe, even though he's still more naive and very friendly and stuff, kind of like Kai. He's definitely taking on more of that wild edge of Soul Bad Guy, but that's also because of Ben growing more into his own and such.
Yeah. Yeah, you have more than one influence. It's not just like, oh, it's not JoJo plus Gurren Lagann. You got lots of different things coming together in one in this. Like you even have some like Western cartooniness too, coming into some of this. Yeah.
And early on, the series was supposed to have more just a not pure, but like 70% cartoon, Western cartoon influence compared to 30% anime. But then it got more into anime. I was more comfortable with anime, and then I decided to just go pure on. Wanted to go more into the Gynax sort of style. That's why I started studying more with Imayashi. Freaking love him. One of my favorite artists. But that's why I took more of an Imayashi approach with the art style. And you can see that more hitting around episode 5 once Frankie appears. And even episode 6, like some of these episodes, as of now, they have more of the new touch-ups from the first volume campaign. But episode 5, you'll see that officially this is when I was wanting to go more of that Gynax trigger Imayashi influence in terms of anime vibe.
Yeah, like I notice it in how you pose figures. Like you will pose figures, your characters in like these incredible, elegant, like exaggerated, punches. It's kind of like that How to Draw Comics the Marvel way.
Yes, exactly.
Page where they keep showing like more and more exaggerated punches. Yeah, you go to the max with that.
Yeah, part of that's because I freaking love composition, and it's important to understand that. And but that page is one of the things that maybe really, it made my mind click. Like, okay, so this is what I need to do because it took me a while to properly convey motion. Like in F1 Origins, you could tell there was a lot of passion stuff, but my posing and the way I described motion was not always good. It was just kind of like I'm going to use the blur tool here and there in order to try to describe motion and the impact of it. But then there were some scenes I was like, wow, that was really good. But like what I learned from How to Draw Comics the Marvel way, especially that one particular page, is essentially that in order to draw the best way to show that action is to either do it before, like as it's warming up, or after, because those are the most you see it clear and concise. Because if you try to do it in the middle while it's going, it's technically accurate, but it does not look as good. There's a lot of people that will try to be like, oh, you got to be things need to be more anatomically correct. But sometimes when you're looking at things in motion, even though it's anatomically correct, it doesn't look like it's proper because it's hard to translate that in still images. And that's why foreshortening and things like that, techniques like that, are needed in order to help you understand that. And I also studied a lot of shapes. That's where a lot of my Western influence comes in, because a lot of Western character design, good Western character design, uses shapes and geometry to really help define bodies and things like that. In anime, I'm not trying to say like anime, but like in more Eastern influences, they definitely take more of like a life, not life, but you know what I mean. They take a more realistic approach, surprisingly, which a lot of people be like, oh no, they don't. Look at the body types and stuff. But like they actually do. You study more actual anatomy if you want to get closer to that style than you think, because they're trying to capture the beauty of things like that, and so they're trying to understand how reality works in that regard in order to capture the beauty of it. Now, not all of it's like that, but you can tell in like some of the more like older series meant for older audiences or things like that, or shoujo and things like that, they actually try to study more of the anatomy and not be as cartoonily proportionate. But then you have other people like Go Nagai and Imayashi and things like that who definitely go more for that cartoony approach. But you know what I mean?
Yeah. I want to talk, I'm looking at art of Thomas Sawyer. So this is just another general observation I have is in posing your fights, constructing your fights, I guess, you tend to have a human character element. Like I'm thinking of the fight with Barry, where his philosophy is basically evolutionary survival of the fittest. The law of nature is that the strong defeat the weak, so I can kill whatever I want. And of course, Ben has a more like a value. He values human life, and so Ben has a ideological contrast with Barry. You also think about how in a fight things like position and strategy matter. So Toma is the daughter of a wrestler. She uses over the top professional wrestling moves. Barry is a big brute. He uses brute strength and moves surprisingly quickly for such a big guy. And I remember Ben realized, oh, well, if I shoot your legs, that breaks your power essentially, because all of your fighting style is based on moving quickly using your muscle mass, right?
Yeah.
So and talk a bit about the strategy of fighting.
So a lot of it always comes back to JoJo, but basically it's just from JoJo, you could definitely tell the fights are really thought out, because a lot of people will think like I can't speak today. But a lot of people be like, "Oh man, this guy won the battle by pulling a fucking frog out of his ass. Now it's all done for." But when you think about like Araki makes sure that the battles have rules and stuff, and that especially with the stand users, once that got officially introduced, that you have the stands, you have their users, and you have to learn how the stand rules work. You'll often know, okay, this is how this person's stands work, but then you're trying to learn how the other person's stand works. And then when you look back on it, it makes complete sense. And part of it's also because once the series introduced stands, characters have to understand their stands' weaknesses and strengths and play to them. Because some of them have what you would think are really, really shitty stands, but then end up being absolutely ridiculously buff and insane within the right conditions. And you see all these people making sure that they're in the right conditions in order to activate their stand properly. It's a joke, but it makes sense. And it's one of the reasons why I love fights in JoJo, especially parts 4 and 5, in my opinion, are some of the best. Part 7 is also fantastic, but a lot of people will agree that part 5 has some of the best fights. But anyway, point being that applied to UIR, even though not every character has a stand and stuff, it goes back to the whole, okay, this character has this gimmick. How's Ben going to fight them? And things like that. Because, you always want to keep things interesting whenever you bring in a new character that has this power. And you also want to make sure your main protagonist still looks cool while doing it. And that's why I gave Ben the ability to regenerate, because he's going to be going up against a lot of powerful opponents. But I want him to survive it, but also not just survive and dominate, but I want him to survive and calculate essentially and figure out how is he gonna go about this, because Ben learns along the way. Like later on he fights Necronaut, the undead, and he learns that his aura can actually take out the dead. And then he thinks when he goes against Highway Jack, okay, this guy's dead, clearly. If I use my aura, then she'll work out. But then it turns out Jack's actually doesn't work the same way. So Ben has to find a workaround. It's little things like that. Ben's learning, trying to figure out how to handle this situation, especially with his orb, what he can do, what he can't do. And that's what I like. I like learning and progressing. It's kind of like I love playing action character games. And so a lot of that comes to you. You have your skill set, and you have to learn time and figure out all the opponent's abilities and move sets and things like that, and figure out what you can do in order to get in. There's another influence before it got really super big, which was Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. And you can tell that because in episode 4, when Barry's introduced, the title is literally Rules of Nature. But basic, and also one of the lines Ben says in there, your rules of nature can suck. It's actually a reference to a remix by Triple Q, which mashes up Rules of Nature, freaking My Own Master Now, some Devil May Cry songs, and then it's just ridiculously good. But that's another music reference. But it goes back to that whole character action thing. You want to be able to make sure your characters, they have an opponent that's tough to base, but they learn how to take it down along the way like you would in the game. And that sounds like very video gamey. Like, of course, every video game is like that. But in a lot of character action games, it's more you have to really think and master everything at your disposal. Like, you have easy to understand, difficult to master. And I love games like that.
Yeah. And Ben's power isn't a press start to win button power.
Oh, no.
He has to think about it. I'm really thinking of like Giorno. His power is to create life, and he uses it very differently later in the series when he figures out the power to create life means the power to create organic matter, which means he can heal. Like he has to creatively think to realize that's a way he can apply his power, as opposed to Diamond is Unbreakable, where the protagonist, his natural ability is to heal. He doesn't have to come up with that as a creative application of his power.
Josuke does act. But in the reverse thing, Josuke already knows that he can restore people and such. But then he learns how to also apply it in other crazy ways. Like there's scenes like where he learns how to use Crazy Diamond in order to create projectiles from like restoring things or like returning objects to each other. He learns how to use as a projectile like that. Or like how to disassemble the motorcycle when he's trying to run away from Highway Star and then reassemble it in order to avoid crashing into things and flying in the air and then rebuilding and things like that. But that's another thing I love about those protagonists is because they learn in JoJo, they learn more about how to handle the abilities better and study them essentially. That's why I love the battling in the series because it's really good fights and really good character depth and understanding and like seeing them progress and understanding their situation and their abilities and getting better at it. That's why I brought the character action perspective up because when you're in those games, it's not just simply a hack and slash like a lot of people could think, even though there is, but it's also making you realize, okay, how do I go about this? How do I slow down, think, what can I use my abilities for here? Is there a way I can cheese this or things like that?
I want to talk a bit about the overall plot construction for season 1 because I've seen actually some of your commentary on this. So one of the pieces of feedback you were concerned about was I think you said you were worried that there wasn't enough of the secondary characters in season 1, and it was kind of like one of those pro-con things where I thought, well, yeah, I would like to see more of the secondary characters, but the way you've kind of done it makes sense. It's sort of like every episode is an introduction episode for one of the characters, and it's focusing on Ben meeting them. So Ben meets Toma, Ben meets Hayes, Ben meets Frankie, and the secondary characters aren't coming along for every adventure at first, but that kind of lets us focus on, it sort of like lets the reader mentally focus on, okay, one new character. I only have to keep track of one new character. So I actually think it really works well for season 1. I know we've seen Toma. We saw a bit of Toma in the Freak of Nature series. When did Hayes and we did see Frankie. We saw a redheaded version of Frankie.
Yeah, that was in the remake of FON Origins. Yeah, and it's kind of funny because there's a whole meme, but Hayes was supposed to be in the original FON Origins was supposed to be debuting in this city that they go to in Georgia because I live in Georgia and stuff, and it was supposed to be like the city was called Harrowat City because even with every incarnation, there's still an influence of Ben's main story being based off of Beowulf, and so Harrowat City was based off the Hall of Harrowat, But Hayes would have been a character there, and that's where they would have been introduced to him. And Hayes was actually significantly younger when I first had the idea for him. He was supposed to be like 16, and definitely had more of a hip hop influence. And then later down the line, I decided to make him more the same age as Ben and Tama. In fact, a little bit older than Ben. Originally had the idea of like he was the oldest of the group, and he's kind of taken over Dwight's role, essentially, of being more like that serious member. But yeah, that's the whole thing. But honestly, I like it. I mean, I still miss Dwight, and that I still kept him in there, but I definitely love more the dynamic and the trio idea with Ben, Hayes, and Tama, especially with how their abilities work and things like that. I just enjoy it more.
I also like the angle of how you have multiple factions. So like there is a good versus evil vibe, but we've also got bounty hunters who are opposed, who are hunting down cryptids. We've got Necronaut, who is against Styx, but is willing basically to like use something like dark necromancy, and Ben will have nothing to do with necromancy. So we have anti-heroes, the Yakuza group Lucky Moon. They are kind of like I guess sexy bunny criminals doing their own thing, but as long as Ben isn't opposed to them, they're not hostile to Ben. So I do like this angle where there's more than one or two powers in the world. It gives you some opportunity to have one faction that's maybe like an ally or a co-belligerent and have them play off against each other a little bit.
Yeah, that was the big idea, because I didn't want it to just be one single thing, and also because it goes into Crips and Cowboys once that gets more fully off the ground. But I wanted the world to be more just like alive. I didn't want it just to be only constructed to Ben and Styx, because I wanted Ben to explore more of the world and see more what it's like and stuff, even if we're not going too out of reach with the whole Styx plot. But still, it's been discovering more of this world, the world of cryptids and things like that. And not every cryptid is good, not every cryptid is bad. Some of them have their own organizations and things like that. There's bounty hunters going after them. I want to set all these things up so that people know this world is lived in, and that Ben's not only just looking after Horseshoe. Because at the moment, at the beginning of the story, Ben's really not. He's just doing what his grandpa asked him to, and now he's just discovering this world. And then Horseshoe comes back in about episode 4, and that's when Ben realizes, oh crap, I gotta make sure they're done with. And then with that being said, it goes back to Ben exploring the world a little bit more. But yeah, I wanted to make sure this was more lived in, because I also love having like multiple factions and things like that. There was a lot of shows growing up, but mainly Bionicle was one of them, because you would have like these characters. There would be different villain groups. There was always the overlying threat, Makuta Pterodax. But there was also different villain groups. And in 2006, for example, there was the Paraka, who were all bad guys, but they also weren't. They were kind of just doing this together because they were in it for the prize, but they also were willing to, betray each other whenever the moment arrived. And then it was a cool moment like that. And then as the story got more in depth, you saw there was more different powers and factions at play. And then there's other TV shows that do the same thing. I'm trying to bring it up the top of my head. There's a number of examples I could think of that I can't right now. But basically,
Soul Eater has like the Wicca faction and the DWMA and the Kishin faction. Yeah.
And then you also got One Piece, because obviously with One Piece there's like tons of different pirate factions. You get the Marines and things like that. But I wanted to have more of that thing because it's fun. But I also know sometimes it can be a little bit convoluted, because sometimes we have too many different villain groups. It becomes like, okay, who's supposed to be your focus? And that's why I want to make sure that at the end of the day for this story, it was mainly horror show. And season 2, admittedly, is going to be a bit shorter. Originally, it was supposed to be longer, but because I want to move on to Crips and Cowboys and fish it up, season 1, season 2 more just going to blend. It's just more like one OVA series, I guess would be the better term. But season 2 goes more a bit, has been going more into the whole bounty hunter system and things like that, and we'll have more Ben solidify himself and who he is, and if that makes sense. But more, because I know it's like, oh, Ben's already been solidifying stuff, but no, you'll know what I mean. You'll know what I mean. It's Ben basically discovering who he really is and his place in the world, essentially.
I'm looking at people are digging your art. Abigail says this is very interesting hearing him talk about his craft. I mean, there is like I could just tell by looking at your work that you care a lot about these elements, because you can't get this level of color sensibility and dynamism by accident. Like you were clearly like, and when I look at your really early art, it's clear to me that you had an idea in your mind of a kind of aesthetic, and you sort of taught yourself how to achieve that aesthetic in your work, and I admire that.
Yeah, I really need to get back to doing coloring here soon. I mean, I know I'm doing manga stuff for CNC just to up the production, but I really do enjoy doing coloring and the color swaps and stuff. I don't want to lose that ability, but yeah, I do enjoy it. It's been one of my things that I love doing. And I feel like it's important because color theory is very important. It's not just like simple, oh, yeah, I do color palettes here and there. It's important so that way you can make sure the atmosphere is set right. And also, it's another good way of like telling about a character. Like, one of the things I do a lot is, I give characters different accents and stuff. Sometimes it can be confusing, but like I like doing that because you can tell a lot about a character just by their accent. Like in the South, there's tons of different accents that some people may not think about. Like a lot of people either think it's like hick or upper crust Southern plantation owner, but there's tons of different dialects and accents down here. Same thing applies across all across the country. But I love being from the South and learning all these different accents. I love it, and I want to make sure I apply not just Southern accents but different accents to characters and stuff, so you can get, even if I don't go full into their backstory, you can immediately tell some facts about them from how they talk and the way they present themselves, their clothing and character design, their color scheme, and things like that. But yeah, it's what I like doing. I find it a very fascinating thing. I want to be able to streamline character design and like character backgrounds and stuff, but not to the point where it's just like, oh, I don't want to go too much into it. I just want people to be able to easily read the character and be like, oh, okay, gotcha, and get a good idea of them, but also wanting more and being able to allow for more to be talked about and go in depth in the future with them.
Now, this panel I'm looking at here, this is actually one I remember from the Indiegogo campaign. So not only do you kind of like go back over your work and revise it and tweak it, you also do some revision work for the print publication. So this was this is an example of an old panel.
Yeah, this is an old panel. I forgot to put the new panels in, but I think at this point I'm just going to re-upload the old art of this and then just make a brand new series. It's literally just like the phenomenal edition that just has all the corrections and updated art, possibly. But yeah, that panels like that, I wanted to go back and correct because those are moments like I know I can fix this because it looks very chicken scratch right now. I want to be able to like perfect this the way it needs to be perfected, like that Necronaut panel. Like there's another comparison panel down there.
Yeah.
But
all the way down, I think.
Yeah, but I wanted to make sure for the Indiegogo that I didn't outright redo everything because that would have been awful. I would have thought just immediately to redo everything, and that would have taken way too long. I just wanted to try to update things here and there that I know I could fix up immediately, and that were just need to be fixed up in order to make it more cleaned. But then there's some of those things like the splash panels, especially where I was like, okay, I can easily redo these fully. And there's certain character shots like, the Thomas shot there that you see. I was like, I want to just redo this and make her more consistent. Or like, with this panel right here, the whole I've been bamboozled. Like, I'm really happy I redid that because there's a lot of great potential within episode 10. But because of COVID and me rushing and getting kind of anxiety because of all that, it didn't fully come out the same way. So I'm really glad I'm able to actually just go back and give Grendel, Ironworks Mark IV, the proper menace that he needs and the shine and things like that.
Yeah, it's that kind of like artist's pain. Pennsylvania has a great comment. I get that 100%. Yeah. It's always important to make sure everything looks its best, but sometimes you need to prioritize speed too. Yeah, my art teacher once told me, great art is never finished. It just achieves a state of finish, and then you let it go out into the world.
Yeah, and it's a little bit frustrating because it goes back to the whole sense of perfectionism because I want to make sure everything looks good and looks more like the final way I want to have it done. But I know that's not always possible. And that's been definitely a big lesson I've had to learn while making UIR for sure. But at the end of the day, there's still times I look back, I'm like, okay, yeah, I know for a fact I could fix this. And I can go back and just touch up things. Because there's some parts where Ben really looks jank. Like in that comparison picture of 2019, 2022, Ben looks kind of jank with his face. And then things are more cleared up. He has more focus. It's not too harsh, it allows for better focus and things like that, like little
stronger
details
gesture
like
on the fist.
And this
and clarity. I'm looking at this one with Cherry Bomb, and one of the things that works better about the new is you can sort of see the gesture of her licking her lips easier than in the old version. So it's just clarity. Like half of comics is making sure that even if it's a simple picture, like the reader has to instantly understand what's going on in the picture.
And there's also other things like with Cherry's hair. Originally, it had the 3-point thing, but then I was like, I want to make it look a bit more natural, more soft, and kind of messy because I feel like that fits her more than just the straightened edged hair. Because when I did that, it was supposed to be trying to like, oh, I want to do a new hairstyle. It's kind of 90s based, that whole 90s hairstyle and things like that. But then I was like, okay, this looks great, but I need to touch it up a little bit more and just make it more fluffy and messy, because that's the kind of character Cherry is. And especially since the facade is down after, the whole first blow up kiss thing. It's like, okay, now let's just show her for what she really is. Fucking crazy.
Yeah. So people, by the way, I have the link to the webtoons. If you want to read the webtoons version, just know that the print edition is going to have some of this updated art where I see the improvement in all of them, basically. Like in this one, the thing that stands out to me is the fist. In the earlier one of Barry the Barracuda, I noticed that, his posing was a lot more menacing. He looked taller. He looked weightier. So you are like you're not just going back and redrawing it for the fun of it. You are like actually critically looking at your work and finding ways to improve the dynamism of it. And it's already extremely dynamic work. Like, let's make it even more dynamic.
There's like the whole idea is just basically going back, because I know people like seeing the artistic evolution. Originally, I was like, I don't want to do this until I like fully cleaned up. And then a lot of people are like, we like seeing the progression stuff. So I just focus more on like doing little details. And then when I see a moment like I really just 100% redo it, I'll redo it. And like, there's even parts where like I was finishing up episode 6, but I'm like, I wish I could have done more and stuff. I also have to realize, okay, I just need to just do little detail work. There's some panels here and there that I can redo easy, but it's mostly just me trying to make sure I understand that I don't stress myself, because it's another thing. I don't want to stress myself, and I don't want to end up potentially remaking something and making it worse, because sometimes that could easily happen. It's like when you're trying to outdo yourself, and then you're like, oh man, I'm doing so much better, but then you end up doing worse, because sometimes that can happen. Sometimes it can happen. Part of this because of style change and things like that, but it's just one of the things I'm trying to avoid. But also like you have that worry about, because you want to make sure you're doing better. And you know what I mean? Or sometimes people just don't think you're doing better because they're still attached to the old artwork. There's a lot of other things like that. But I just wanted to make sure that at the very least, just doing those touch-ups. And when I can actually flex my newer skills, I'll go back and do that in order to make sure things are better realized.
Something I just want to throw out there, since I'm just happen to be on it. I love I don't even know if this was intentional, but Barry is obsessed with strength and his philosophy of strength. But the second he meets Styx and the others, he instantly encounters people who are stronger than him. He's essentially a slave or strong-armed into service. So no sooner does he articulate his philosophy of the strongest one wins than he himself encounters someone stronger than him that manipulates him. It's a great little touch.
Styx isn't stronger than him physically. He's stronger than him mentally. And then he has like the Ironworks, which is supposed to be earlier in the series, like the peak. And then there's someone else that's coming in, which you've probably already seen in like, I don't know if you've read episode 12. I know you said you talked about this first season, but episode 12, there introduces a character by the name of Rondo, who literally presents himself as just a bigger threat just by how casually he pops someone's head.
Okay, I think I finished episode 11. Yeah, and then I saw your note about working on episode 12, and I haven't read the last chunk yet. Okay.
Oh yeah, you're very surprised on episode 12. It's a little bit more shocking than what I'm usually do, but that's with intent, because Rondo's another one of my favorite characters. But we'll talk about him later on. Then you have like these characters like you have Styx and Arachne, who are much more intellectually superior to Barry, and they're these big science. In fact, Arachne was the one that created Barry. Like she made him the way he is and such. And that's whole Arachne's more like that genetic mutations and stuff. Styx is a bit more of a clusterfuck. And later in the series, you learn that Styx had, when he was Drizzle, he liked evolution. He liked studying genetics and things like that. And it also leads to another dynamic with like Styx and Arachne. Arachne being the newer generation outdoing him, and Ben being the passing on the torch from Fleetwood. Even though Arachne's technically the same age as Styx in a weird way, maybe older. It's hard to explain, but you know what I mean. It's a passing on the torch or taking the torch away sort of thing. That's another thing within this. It's basically like continuing on.
Also speaking to Styx's intellect, he's an unstable intellect, and you set it up really well. So Ironside, basically like Styx just orders Ironside not to kill Ben, and Ironside thinks that's Ironworks, sorry, yeah, Ironworks. And Ironworks thinks that's illogical, which is the setup later for Ironworks AI developing self-awareness and basically asking, well, why am I working for this human Styx guy? I'm smarter than him, right? So there's duplicity.
I wanted to add more moments like that, but at least wanted to add something there so it could lead into that whole thing. And originally, I wasn't even going to do that. But when I added, I was like, wait a second, this is actually a really fucking good idea. Because I was kind of getting tired of Styx the way he was, but I wanted to do more with Styx. Originally, Styx was just supposed to die by Necronaut's hand. Like Necronaut finally got his revenge and stuff, and then Styx was supposed to be completely out of the story. But then I got the idea of doing a redemption arc with Styx and trying to go more in depth, and that's how the Nightmare Fuel thing came in, like trying to develop that more, and that's what led to all of that and such. And the funny thing is you'll see in season 2, it's kind of the Nightmare Fuel is also doing the same thing that it did Styx, but for Ironworks, and it's just kind of like hubris of repeating and the generational trauma, as it were, continues. But you know what I mean.
Speaking of redemption, I really like the angle when Ben fought Highway Jack. That Highway Jack was a serial killer, and he literally tries to pull the trick on Ben. Oh, well, you're the protagonist. You can't kill me. How would that make you? Wouldn't that mean you weren't any better than me? And Ben has to think about it and thinks, well, wait a minute, you're already dead. And he kicks the pumpkin off his head. Right. So not only is that cool because Ben's kind of cleverly, sending up the pacifist protagonist archetype a little bit. What he specifically is furious at about Highway Jack is that Highway Jack had a chance of redemption. He had a second chance of life, and he just chose to return to his serial killer ways, which tells us that Ben is someone who really cares about the idea of redemption, even for an evil man. And it's interesting that we get to see a pacifist character express that kind of, I guess, righteous fury at an evil man. And then later when Styx starts to redeem and kind of be free from the effects of Nightmare Fuel, we see the payoff for that is that Ben actually does get to show compassion to a villain who is trying to redeem himself or awaken from his dark side.
Mm-hmm. And that's the idea, because I didn't want Ben, because I know sometimes it's hard to do redemption arcs. Like, you want to redeem everybody. You either will do it really well, like a Trigun, or you'll end up doing pretty good early on and then fumbling the bag really hard, like Steven Universe. And for Ben, I wanted Ben to be a character that cared about everybody, wants to redeem everybody, but he's also like, he's got to put a line somewhere. Like, it's important that if you're going to change, you're going to change within this life. And if you get a second chance, take that second chance well. And Jack's another character that I'm going to be playing with more in Crips and Cowboys specifically, because there's a lot to Jack. Jack originally started off as like a one-note character, but I started adding more and more to him. Originally, he was just like this one-note sidekick character that's supposed to be just, complete psychopath. And then I had the dumb little joke in episode 11 where he sees Arachne transform, and then he starts getting very turned on. Then everybody started calling him a simp. And so it led to this joke of Highway Jack being this absolutely devilish serial killer, but being absolutely down bad with women. But that also leads to another facet of his character, which leads to the original inspiration with him. If we want to stop, I want to talk about this for a little bit before we talk about Frankie, because I love Frankie, but
sure.
I want to talk about Highway Jack for a little bit more.
Let me see if I can skip ahead to there.
Yeah. We'll go back to Frankie in a moment.
Yeah.
But anyway, with Highway Jack, it was based off, I was originally trying to figure out a cool Halloween theme, because when the episode came out, it was supposed to be Halloween. But then I was trying to think about what to do. And originally I was like, what can I do? And I thought about doing the Doulahan. I thought about like Sleepy Hollow and things like that. And so I went more with the pumpkin theme. And he was based off some songs like Rolling Stones, Jumping Jack Flash, things like the Highway to Hell. But the Jumping Jack Flash specifically was just kind of like a good starting off, because it starts off with like Jack was born to a life of trauma. I'm not going to explain everything though. But Jack was born into a little bit of a hard life. That's all I'll say. And he even, the story that he gives isn't the true story. He gives out the story like, oh, I was this serial killer at one point. I was this slasher I was the hook man. But that's not what it is. Originally, I was going to go more set with that, but now I was like, I think it'd be better if he was just lying about this. He's still a serial killer that means business, and it's obvious because he's collected all these souls. But there's something else going on with Jack. He's not just manic because he was born that way. In the opposite way, he's in similar ways to Ben, trying to find his place in the world. But unlike Ben, who has been constantly trying to be on a more positive path, Highway Jack has basically fallen into darkness essentially, and just has a very greedy heart. That's what I'll say. But you'll see more of that later on, especially with that whole his love of ladies thing, like how much of a simp he is. It just goes back to how empty he feels, and that lack of self-care, not self-care, but you know what I mean. He doesn't have a solid foundation. He
Yeah.
lacks something important to his core.
His,
He's empty. And it
his,
goes
his
back
evil
to
his evil personality is a projection. It's like he's trying to create a personality for himself out
but
of this
it
insecurity and this weakness. Yeah.
yeah, but it goes back to what I was trying to say. He was based off of like a stingy Jack, and that's where a lot of like the Jack o' lantern thing came from. Because stingy Jack was the man that couldn't go to heaven but was rejected by hell. Essentially, was forced to walk the earth. And that whole line about like heaven and hell no place for me. It was meant to be Jack be like having a badass line, but it has more significance to it. I can't say what, but it just plays more to how Jack really has no place. And it's partly his own fault, and partly with the world that dealt it, but also partly because he didn't see any other way. He just thinks he's stuck this way. I'm not going to say if he gets redeemed or anything like that, but you'll see more of like that characterization and how that affects him later on in the next series I do. But that's basically, there's a lot to Jack basically that makes him a rival of sorts to Ben proper. But yeah.
Character design wise, I want to throw out that I like the detail that Jack's pumpkin can emote. I think this is something artists struggle with a lot unless they do cartooning, because cartooning, you emphasize expression and simplification. So if you just draw like a blank Spider-Man mask, that's kind of boring. So the best Spider-Man artists always find a way to somehow animate his eyes or give him expression behind the mask. And you let Jack's jack-o'-lantern can grimace or frown. It does more than just the one facial type. So that's a really nice little cartoon convention there. I appreciate.
Oh yeah, and there's a logical reason behind it too, because that's basically his new head. Like his old head's gone, so that's his new head. So because of magic, hoodoo, voodoo, wizard did it powers, his pumpkin can emote. And originally there was supposed to... Sorry, what was I about to say? I was going to say it was like originally there was concept art. I can't find it right now, but there was concept art of where Jack actually was able to switch heads with his actual head and the pumpkin head. And originally he had like this mohawk thing going on, but then I was like, I like the idea more of just the pumpkin head thing. Also, that tattoo on the back of his back, it's kind of ironic, but that too is actually a reference to a Smashing Pumpkin song, which is another inspiration for him. But it's the bullet with butterfly wings, which is another part of Jack's influence and part of his background in terms of music influence.
I dig it. More music influences. Always bring them on. Definitely. All right.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything more about Jack, or do you want to get to
let's get back
best girl?
Let's get back in order.
Frankie?
I just kind of got into a big tangent on Jack because we started going into the whole redemption thing. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, hey, I brought up the redemption thing. That was my fault.
No, it's not your fault. I was just saying, like, because of the whole thing, I was just kind of like, oh, shit. I was just kind of going to Jack because Jack's another one of my favorite characters. Not a lot of people think about that, like, oh, this is one of your favorite characters. I'm like, yes.
Well, he did well on the fan poll as well. I think it was like 4th or something.
Oh, yeah. He was a surprisingly popular character, but that was also when he was a little bit more not fully fleshed out, but also made me want to flesh him out a little bit more. Seeing that poll and seeing people like see how they reacted to him and such. I was like, oh, I want to do more with him. People like him. I want to see if I can do more with him. That led to more of the creativity and the passion behind his backstory and things like that. Because originally he was just supposed to be just kind of like that, but then the Stingy Jack influence came more and more because of that poll. I will say that.
So we were either up to Frankie or we were up to...
we literally were on middle Frankie, and that's when the whole Highway Jack thing started. It was like when Frankie when Ben brought in the car for Frankie.
Yeah, so she appeared in FON Origins, and one observation I'll make about Frankie is, she's a very different personality from Toma. Toma is kind of a classic tomboy, very tough and ferocious. Frankie, we don't see her fight. I guess she's kind of tomboyish in the sense that she likes doing mechanical work, and she's a big Amazon, but she's much more Dolly Parton, Southern Belle. Another aspect of Southern culture, right?
No, yeah. But yeah, she's basically this Southern Belle-esque character, and I wanted both Tom and Frankie and all the girl characters, like, I want to make sure that they were able to still be feminine, like whether it's because of their body type or because of like their personalities and stuff, but also still be able to do things that were not traditionally feminine, but didn't have to be. But like, so Frankie, I loved her being a mechanic and stuff because it also makes sense with her abilities and something that was carried over with her knowing about cybernetics and stuff. But it was also partly because growing up in my family, a lot of women in my family, like from my mom's side of the family, own their own businesses and things like that. My mom owned a performing arts studio. very self-starter women and things like that. But also Frankie isn't just purely, like stuck up or thinks she can do everything on her own. She doesn't need a man. In fact, she loves Ben and she wants Ben to know that they're in it together as later on as the series goes. But Frankie's just basically a very confident little woman. I say a little, not like that, but you know what I mean. She's very confident in herself, but she's not, unlike Cherry. So in the spectrum of like femininity and stuff like that, like compared to Cherry's a lot more, how do we put this?
Yandere, Cherry's Yandere.
Well, not even just Yandere. She's just slut.
Yeah.
But basically,
I was surprised. I was surprised at some of the lengths you went with her. I mean, it's all suggestive. Like nothing bad on screen, but so there's implied X-rated stuff in Cherry's vibe and backstory. Yeah.
Originally, she wasn't supposed to be that. She was supposed to be more like pure Bakugo, and I was like, it's not fun. And I was like, okay, what if she got turned on by this? I was like, that'll be fun. We're gonna figure out how I can cruise around. But
contrasting with Ben's innocence. Ben's innocent, and so he kind of just reacts in shock when Cherry.
Yeah. That's also another thing. It's not necessarily just because I wanted to just have like horny character, but it's also just more like Ben, just like what the fuck, just kind of like that. What the fuck, mom? Because Ben really has not experienced anything like that. He's just like a young farm boy. He doesn't know how to receive flirting and things like that. It's kind of like based on my personal experience. Also, my dad, because apparently, funny story. My dad. A lot of girls when he was in college would like bake stuff for him, and he thought they were just being nice and stuff. Never knew they were flirting. My mom, when they were friends, was like, "Todd, you know that all these people are flirting with you, right?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then apparently a girl was like flirting with him one day. She got real close and then sat on his lap, and he was like, "Oh," it was just like that kind of moment. And then he realized, "Oh, okay, they actually are." And that's kind of the moment I was like for Ben, like when Cherry was just kind of like, "Oh God, oh." But then but Ben and Frankie as well, this sounds bad, but I wanted to rush the relationship in a way of like, I just wanted to go ahead and have them be in a relationship. Not because of anything but because I knew that like, I couldn't really set up a romance long burn, but I just wanted them to be, I knew I could write a already together romance, but I just wanted them to be together real quick because I wanted them to have like a solid relationship and showcase more of that. Because I also wasn't the main focus was the romance, but I wanted to have that. You know what I mean? So I wanted to make sure they could just get it set out of the way. No will he, won't he with like Tama or Cherry or Paradox or anything like that. It was just Ben and Frankie. Also, it kind of makes sense in hindsight because, Frankenstein's monster and the monster's bride and things like that, which that is some Frankie inspiration as well. But also with Frankie, I just wanted her to be like this very feminine, but also still like, she's able to do things like she's able to be a mechanic. She's a smart businesswoman and stuff. But she's a gentle giantess at the end of the day. She's just this very sweet, loving gal. And basically just very, very indicative of Southern Belle culture. And just also like, part of it back there is, like I said, side of my family, my mom, and a lot of women in that side of her family were able to do businesses and things like that and were self-starters and such. Right now, my mom and my sister are actually going into doing not retail, but like doing realtor work, like, selling houses and working together on that. My big sister just had her test today. I don't know how that went, but I hope best for her. But basically just that whole idea.
Yeah. You basically you rejected the notion that being capable means you are a ball buster, right? Like Frankie, it has very motherly qualities to her, combined with literal physical strength. Okay, here's something I want to praise. So I like that she's a cyborg and Ben's a cyborg. So there's literally a fantasy, connection parallel between the two of them. And Ben is an innocent soul, and Frankie's a pretty innocent, caring soul, right? So the connection between them is there's another cyborg like me, but they're also people like one another as well. It's not opposites attract. It's parallel strengths that complement one another.
No, yeah. And there is some differences between Ben and Frankie, obviously, like as you learn later on, but like it's clear that like they do find the reason why they like each other is because there is some familiarity, but there is differences between them because I didn't want to just be seeing like, oh, you're just like me for real. That's why I like you. There's more to it than that because Frankie isn't just like Ben, where Ben's fighter and stuff. Frankie is more of a like Ben is a peacemaker, but Ben, as he gets more into the story, is more of a fighter and more protective and more. He just gets more rowdy and stuff. But Frankie's a lot more very polite. She's very upper class as well. Ben's much more of a farm boy. And Frank, that's another thing. It's kind of like a Romeo and Juliet situation, but with a class difference. It doesn't seem like that at first, but you can tell that Frankie's very, like the way she speaks, the way she dresses and acts and stuff. She's very prim and proper, but she's not stuck up. She's just very prim and proper. She's a lady. Ben's just a, farm boy and stuff. He's just to the point. He's innocent. Innocent, but like he's just to the point. He's kind of not crass. He's just unorthodox, essentially.
The scene I'm thinking of is when he's going to her to get his arms repaired, right? Mm-hmm. So Frankie's literally taking care of him in the sense that she's a mechanic, and he kind of like lets loose that he lacks confidence in himself. And I think Frankie's way of handling it is, well, you're a gentleman. You shouldn't unload on me like that without asking. Which it was a really subtle scene because she is sort of simultaneously she's sort of simultaneously being willing to be emotionally supportive of him while also kind of like calling him to be a gentleman, right? Mm-hmm. And then also supporting him herself by saying, okay, well, you don't have to pay me. You're going to pay me by taking me out on a date, right? So she's she's socially gracious.
No, yeah, but it's just one of those things because it's kind of like the reason why I put that in line is because it was kind of, I can't speak, but I wanted it to be a moment of like Ben showing weakness and stuff, but I didn't want it to, but I also wanted there to be consequence of him, but just kind of like venting a little bit like that. And Frankie not being mean, but she's like, okay, don't do that on me. I understand what you're going through, but don't, because that's a very Southern way, like just growing up and stuff. Like there's nothing wrong with us admitting our feelings and stuff. That's something I grew up learning, is that it's totally okay. When I was finally getting comfortable like expressing my emotions and stuff, all my sister, my mom were like, no. You can talk about this, but reel it back in, ask first. There's nothing wrong with it. Just ask. If you can vent, don't be rude like that. And it's more Frankie's just personality being very polite, having manners and things like that. And also because she expects better of Ben, because she sees him as a gentleman. And she's not saying that because she doesn't want to hear him. She's just like, okay, first off, just ask me. That's all you have to do. And then she just lets him know that it's okay. Things are going to happen in this life, and that's important. That's where Frankie's importance is. She's not just like a romantic interest, just to be a romantic interest. She's also just an important part for Ben because she is a good foundation for him as well in this new era. And it's not that Tom and Faze aren't, but like Frank in a relationship, you help each other grow and stuff. You're supportive of each other, but you challenge each other to grow as well. And I know there hasn't been a lot of Ben challenging Frankie, but that's because there hasn't been a whole lot of moments of like Frankie need to be challenged and stuff yet.
Yeah. I want a beach episode, right? I want to see them all go to the beach and get their driver's license, like in that one Dragon Ball Z episode. Maybe a couple of mini filler episodes.
Don't tell anyone this yet, but Frankie's actually a little bit of a speed demon.
But yeah, and he got the lasso rocket punch. So little Monkey D. Luffy in that, but being with Frankie literally helps make Ben stronger, right?
Yeah.
But in the literal sense and in the emotional sense, it's connected really well.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to go ahead and have them set up because, like I said, I didn't want to rush it through because I didn't like doing slow burn. It's also because I didn't know how to do it, but I also wanted to do the romance. But I was also like, I want to be careful about how I do this. And I was just like, well, I know how to write people who are already in love because while I haven't had a lot of relationship experience, it's on my mom and dad and stuff. And I've seen people who have already been in relationships for a long time and actually have good, stable relationships and stuff. I just took it from that. And so I know that's not necessarily the most 1 to 2 thing, but like Ben and Frankie aren't normal by any stretch. And that's not even just like, because of pun stuff. Like you'll learn later down the line what I mean. And stuff, why they are more close. And part of it is just because same hat sort of thing, but it goes a little bit deeper than that, but you'll figure out here soon. But it's also, there's a little bit more to why Frankie was a little bit hesitant saying too, and why Ben and why it clicks a little bit better, but you'll figure out why later on. And there's going to be new pages for this, for episode 8 that explain a little bit more because there's more that I want to present about that. But
yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I dug it because I've seen will they, won't they, like especially if you read Marvel and DC comics, will they, won't they will be played out for 40 years.
Oh, no, yeah.
And they'll get them together. Yeah. They'll get them together and they'll divorce them. Yeah.
And then I was just like, I want to just have this, like Ben just get with someone immediately. And originally it was at one point going to be Tama, but also just kind of like saw them more as just like brother and sister sort of deal. There were a lot of people early on that was like, oh, well, Ben and Tom will get together and stuff. Then introduced Frankie, and then episode 8 officially got them together, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, I love Ben and Frankie together. And people just realized once that happened, they were like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm fine with this.
You nipped the Ben and Toma shippers in the bud by making having the romance play out quickly. Have you read My Love Story?
No, I haven't.
Okay, that's a good one because it gets them together within like the first 3 chapters. The couple are together, and the rest of the book is just them together as a happy couple. Like, that's so unusual that seeing a happy couple together feels fresh to me. So I really appreciate that angle on it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now this character, isn't he a reworked version of one of the FON characters?
Yeah, so that's Dwight. That's Dwight Costello. He was originally an FON, and he was originally Hayes's position of like being the more serious of the 3. But here I brought him back because I want him to still have some relevance because I still love the character. But here he's just being Frankie's bodyguard and stuff. There's more with him and all that. Can't explain what exactly, obviously, but things like that.
A definite signal that Frankie comes from a wealthier world if her dad gives her a bodyguard.
Yeah, and that's another thing because I wanted to show more just that whole like farm boy and Southern Belle girl and such, like upper class Southern Belle. You know what I mean? That's why I wanted to show more of that, like because I think it's important because I like that kind of angle because Ben. It's not like Ben doesn't come from anything, but Ben is much more from humble beginnings compared to Frankie.
All right, and this was a Grateful Dead. This is our first time with Hayes kind of being along for an adventure. This was that great little character exchange where Hayes kind of has to look. I know it's a bit stereotypical, but I joined a gang when I was 16. I didn't really have. You don't exactly have time to study history, right? And then Ben kind of like they're 2 guys roasting each other, right? That feels like a good guy to guy back and forth. We talked about this a little bit earlier, where this is where Ben figures out that his healing power has a holy origin, which essentially allows it to cancel out necromancy or kind of like something that's sort of like coded as sort of satanic magic. And there's this great parallel. If Ironworks is a physical force that is constantly threatening Ben, Necronaut is definitely like more of a moral temptation for Ben. Like, hey, I want to work with you. I have this power. I can help you if you work with me. And there's kind of like the parallel where there seems to be like a healing versus a raising of the dead similarities between them, but their power and their methods are still moral. It's like the ring, right? Do you use the ring to fight Sauron, or does using the ring corrupt you like Sauron? So I love that to me, like moral good versus evil angle to it. Talk a bit about Necronaut's design and that contrast.
So originally he was just a Mysterio ripoff in terms of design. I'm going to be blunt to the point. It wasn't until a comic bud of mine suggested, since I was trying to have more of a Wild West theme to the characters, to make him an Undertaker kind of look. And that's what led to this design. It led to the nice little bow tie, but also leads to a very presentable look. Essentially, like he looks very fashionable and he's just very not uptight, but like very... He's about presentation and stuff. He's a very gentlemanly kind of character, even though he is very morally dubious. I wouldn't say he's a bad guy at the end of the day. I'm not going to tell you where he lies morally. That's more about you guys to see as he progresses. But he definitely is on like, hey, well, man, that power is... You're walking a fine line here. And that's another thing, because I didn't want him to be outright evil, but I wanted it to be born that this is a fine line here, a very fine line, basically. And even though he may say he's doing it for good stuff, there's also tinges of like he's going to potentially go down a dark path because he's wanting to go after Styx with his ability, and he doesn't yet. That you may see that in Crips and Cowboys, but basically his whole thing, you could already tell like something bad happened in the past that led to him discovering this power. And it's just clearly, like he says, Styx was part of it. Styx is part of his backstory. That's why he wants to use his power, and that he's also a man of science. He's wanting to observe this. This is something that he's not used to, but he's wanting to study it and see it, because he doesn't see it as like, like demonic or not. And you probably already guessed the origins by the end of it, like seeing the freaking Anubis structure. But the whole thing with Necronaut is he's much more of a scientist. He's not, but unlike Styx and Arachne that are a little bit more devious and stuff, he's not evil or anything. He's just like, interesting shit. But it has the potential as well to lead down a dark path as well. Like I said, you'll figure that more along the way. But Necronaut is definitely more of just like this. He's morally dubious, but at the end of the day, he's not a bad guy, like as in like a evil or anything. But he's definitely, you can't necessarily trust him to be 100% the protagonist as well. He's just kind of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. You know what I mean? He's there to be the ally at times, but also like you really need to be careful, man. And it's kind of also why I introduced Abba. A lot of it says like you'll see later because there's a lot more I want to do with these characters. But UIR is basically just Ben's story about him becoming his own and such. And I want to explore more of the world in Crimson Cowboys, but Necronaut really is more just that a great source of conflict as well for Ben because like he's not like black and white like the other characters and stuff. And a lot of people will say this is their favorite episode, one of their favorite episodes because of the dynamic and the battle and stuff. It's just a really solid episode. It's a great challenge for Ben because you have Ben who has been pretty much black and white morality and stuff being challenged against someone who has similar goals, but he's not necessarily doing everything the straight and narrow like Ben's been trying to do. And this is also where Ben starts getting like not this episode in particular, but like along the way, Ben starts getting punishment for just sticking to the straight and narrow because straight and narrow is not an easy path, and you're going to get freaking, your ass bit, and like it's going to be rough. So but that's one of the reasons why I want to set up Necronaut because he's not like 100% evil, but he's also just like a slow tiptoe as like Ben gets more into this world, realizes things are not going to be easy like he thought. Like he already started realizing that with Barry, but now it's only going to get more tough. And it's also like a good way to introduce like, oh, someone's been around. And they're like, oh, I've been interested to see you. Not this soon, but hey, cool. And it just adds some intrigue and mystery to what's going on in the world and such. I really do enjoy this episode because of it.
There's also a great example of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure style logic puzzle. So the superpowers create a logic puzzle, and simple, smart solutions are always great writing solutions for these kinds of crazy problems. Like he can't summon his power at will. His healing power only activates when he's hurt, and he finds out my healing power is a weapon. So what do I hurt myself, and if I hurt myself, then that activates the healing power, and I can use it as a weapon. Which is a little what I like about this is it's a little dark that Ben's willing to hurt himself to achieve this end. So Necronaut's pushing him to suffer, to pay a consequence for using this holy to use this holy power, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's basically Necronaut at the end of the day, even though Ben doesn't seem his ally, Necronaut is wanting to see Ben get better at it. Partly because of a scientist perspective, also because like he does see Ben as someone that can do great things and stuff. That's what he thinks at the very least. But he's also want to make sure Ben is understanding that this is not going to be an easy world. And while he doesn't care if Ben agrees with him or not, wants to ally with him, he's just like, hey, look, this world's tough shit. I want to see if you're ready for it. You're sink or swim, bitch.
Yeah, and I even think like his just costuming helped. But like I like the re-emphasis on the cowboy aesthetic in Necronaut as a rival. I like that they both have an aura, and so the fact that he has an aura reinforces the importance of auras because auras seems to be a power. I don't think I've seen too much digging into it yet, but we know that Ben had this before he was taken to horror show. So whatever auras are, they're separate from being bit by a cryptid or that they don't seem to have anything to do with nightmare fuel. So again, not only are there multiple factions, there appear to be multiple sources of power in this world. You could be a mutant, you could be a robot.
Yeah, that's another thing I want to add. I want there to be like there's a wide range of abilities in here, and I know that also magic's sometimes a bitch to write, but I want it to be like very simple in terms of rules and stuff because I don't want to get too in depth with it. But I also want there to be like, okay, there's different cast systems and things like that, like skills and stuff. Magic is definitely something that like is possible, but also there's the idea of like you need to be careful messing with this, and that's what I want there to be, especially when you have like Jack and Necronaut. Necronaut seems to have better control of it. But there's also the tipping point potentially. But then Jack is just because he's dual hand stuff, he's just completely gone into the sinister side of it essentially. And meanwhile, Ben has a holy source of energy and such, which you'll figure out why that is later on. I don't want to spoil it yet because it's still one of my favorite reveals and such. But anyway, point is Ben has this holy aura, and it is a counter to the dead stuff because it just not even just because of demonic stuff, but also because like ghosts are. Typically with ghosts and stuff, they're exorcised by holy power and stuff. And part of it's more just like exorcism at the end of the day, which isn't necessarily only for demons. It's also for like getting rid of spirits, things like that. And it's just kind of like a way of like helping them, either helping them move on or move, to hell, things like that. It's just more of like part of Ben's skill set there. And that's what he learns more about what he can do. And then the fight with Cherry, he realizes, wait a second, Cherry has a form of magic. It's not clear what it is because it's not like an aura thing, but he's able to counter it because he learned that his holy aura is able to like at least disable it because he's healing her. He's taken away that power of hers that's similar to Ben's, but like her pain is her strength. But because Ben is healing her, she's not able to do much. She's not able to build up that kinetic energy and stuff. And Ben's able to, actually, knock her out.
Yeah, again, I got to this earlier, but healing is useful in very specific situations, but not a magical. Like it's like they're good pairings. This is why it'd be interesting to see Hayes and Toma brought in more. Is they might pair well against villains who could maybe like curb stomp Ben, right? Like Toma, we get the impression she's an excellent physical fighter, but she can't heal. That means that Cherry Bomb could blow her up much more easily than Ben, right? Mm-hmm. And Ben kind of notices the situation and instructs Toma to find a way to restrain Cherry Bomb while he takes the brunt of the punishment from Cherry Bomb's attacks.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what okay. Like I said, Hayes and Tama will be more in Crips and Cowboys and stuff. But yeah, definitely it's more of a case of like just properly pairing them up. But that's where more of like I want to be more experimental, Ben's healing aura and such, like we talked about earlier, because there's a lot you can do with it and allows for him to stay interesting as a protagonist. Because like I said earlier, there's sometimes when you get a character, if you give them a basic ability, sometimes they might end up coming across a character like, whoa, this character has a much cooler ability, and like, why are we focusing on him and such? And it's kind of hard. And then sometimes there's webtoons and stuff where it's like, this ability is like, oh, I can copy your ability, and they'll do it in interesting ways and stuff. But I kind of just want to have Ben not have a copy ability, but just more like Ben's able to just take a hit, but the way he's able to take a hit can be used to handle a fight better or such.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about, so I basically have a question about your process. I think you've said that you compose for the comic page first, and then you rejigger it for webtoons. And you've also talked a little bit about how you rework the art. So talk a little bit about like, what's it like preparing your comic for printing, lining up the printer and the publisher and everything?
So basically, it's been a while since I did the first campaign stuff, but typically whenever I make pages and stuff, I do it in original print format first. And then I just organize them down into, the vertical sheet stuff. I do try to keep in mind the vertical sheet stuff because sometimes horizontal panels, for example, don't always work out well. And either I have to angle them or I'll have to really close them down and stuff or blow them up, depending. And that gets a little bit weird sometimes. But I do try to keep in mind the vertical format while I'm creating the pages. But I still want it to be more like print at the end of the day. So that way, if I were to do print like when I did the last time or this time, that it's easy to just go ahead and get it done. I don't have to reorganize all these panels into a page because sometimes I could get very sloppy. I remember I was helping Sed with What a Hero when he asked me a question about because he was going to get his series, The Witch's Throne, to print. But since they only do vertical formats and stuff first, he was trying to get some advice about how to do in print format. So I was able to help him out that. But yeah, it's a difficult process when you're doing it vertical first and then trying to get into a book because it can end up getting really odd sometimes. Like there's a lot of negative space, like Solo Leveling. It's finally getting books out now. But reading the pages, sometimes it can be hard to read at times, partly because of just a lot of the negative space and because there's like so few panels on a page at times. And you can tell it wasn't meant for print. They're really trying to reconfigure it for that. It's just one of those issues when it comes to it, especially since they're trying to do it in a manga size booklet. It's just one of those things.
So that's why I have the opposite problem because I start traditional and then I transition from traditional to the webtoons format. So I've gone back and tried to read some of my pages and just thought, oh gosh, it's so hard to read this in the webtoon style really forces you to think about using space economically, right? Mm-hmm. Like every pixel counts if it's just an iPhone screen that you can read it on. So.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like you don't want to add too much content, which I know why some people complain about because like, oh, there's so much negative space. But when you add too much content, sometimes it's harder to just like simply to scroll through. Sometimes you're just having to like inch, and there's sometimes a lot of content you're digesting, and sometimes it doesn't flow properly. And that's why I had to learn in order to try to make things work better. But yeah, it's a catch-22 there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I also like how you use a lot of you use rectangular and kind of like rhomboid shapes, but a lot of the shapes end up being a little off kilter. So it works in the vertical format. What happens is we kind of get like this interesting shape that's not just rectangle, 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 rectangle. In the print format, it's still let me see if I can flip over to show an example. So I'll have to switch the screen. But in the vertical format, what happens is it ends up giving maybe the whole page a slightly off kilter feel, and you do compose by the page. So I guess if you had done it all vertically and then we're trying to make it work, then the problem would be, for comic panels, you don't just want the panels to look good, you also want flow from panel to panel.
Yeah, because composition at the end of the day is very key, especially with web comics and such. Not web comics, but just like print versions. Now, I will say I kind of fell, not hard, but I did fell off a little bit because I was trying to go for more manga style as things progress. Like episode 13, you probably noticed it. And that's why I want to try to go back a little bit and try to implement more Western paneling. But like I said, the idea was trying to make sure things looked interesting. And I want to go back to like fixing that up for the Crips and Cowboys. Like I said, part of it's also a page difference. Like the pages that I did UIR with early on, up until about like episode, I think like 13 again, were 11 by 17 pages roughly. And now that I'm doing it on more manga style stuff, it's a different page size, but it's a bit more less narrow. So it's kind of squashed in, doesn't allow for a lot more panels and such. Less paneling and more structure, which is structure's good, but kind of gets into repetitiveness. So I want to try to fix that up. That's one thing I've noticed I want to fix up for sure with Crips and Cowboys and finishing up UIR.
Yeah, I got you. And you are the kind of artist who like is always re-looking at your old work and tweet. Oh, okay, this is a good panel. You get not just color, but silhouette, and this might be more some of that Western animation influence. You think about shape and silhouette a lot. So for a panel like this to work, like we've got to take one look at it on the right and say, oh, that's Toma. She's got the alligator tail. That's Ben. He's got the jacket and the cowboy boots and the spiky hair. Right? Mm-hmm. Like it's not an easy thing to pull. Like some artists joke about how this is a bit of a cheat because you can just fill it in black if you don't want to.
Oh no, yeah, it absolutely, it absolutely is a cheat for me for here. But yeah, like I said, I want to make sure there's enough details so you know whose it was and all that.
Sweet. You want to say anything more about Cherry Bomb while we're looking at her?
So Cherry, like I said, I made this comment earlier, but she was kind of originally just kind of like Bakugo, where she had like exploding power. She still had the ability where like if you give her damage, she folds back tenfold, but then I got the idea, which was kind of stupid, where it was like, oh, she likes the pain and stuff. Originally, she was a lot more sheepish about it and weird. Like she was like that weird girl that just liked the pain. But then eventually she developed more into being just more like this very bratty, very bold, and very, just like let me yes in your face, but basically just like very brash character. Because I felt like if it was just like always weird, weird girl all the time, it would get weird and like not. It would get annoying a little bit more. I know that some people like those characters, but also I didn't want to be too weird with it. So I just developed her. So she kind of developed more, just more of this very haughty, proud kind of woman. She knows what she is. She's confident about herself. Like she's very brazen, essentially. And a lot of her clothing.
I like that Toma's on this adventure, so we kind of get a female perspective. Like I think it might be Toma who calls her a slut or something.
Oh no, Toma refers to her as a exploding Jezebel, basically, which is a very nice way of saying you fucking slut.
Oh, and again, Ben. What upsets Ben about people is it's sort of like needless cruelty and evil gets on him because he's a caring character. Don't mess with the guy who is hesitant to use violence because he'll only use it when it's absolutely necessary. Yeah.
And then after the panel, then she's like, "Oh, wait a minute, you're living. Oh, I can have some fun with this." And then Ben's just like caught off guard. And I like the redone panel a little bit more, but just the idea of just being like, "What are you doing?" Just like
it interrupts him right in the middle of his rage. She gets to the farm.
Yeah, nowadays it's kind of like some people be like, it's a Marvel moment stuff, but like back then it was before the whole Marvel like overdid. But I like that moment because it's just more like a funny little like Ben's being serious, and then it kind of shows her tone, like how uncaring she is. She's like, oh, okay. But it makes sense. It makes sense. Ben's not used to that kind of behavior. He's just like, what the fuck? And then Tama is a bit. She's not like a whore or anything like that. What I mean by like that whole like when I was about to say she's not innocent, but like I didn't because I feel like people would think like something completely different. But it's like she's just seen more of the world. She's more gruff than Ben. She's kind of dealt with it more than him. She's not as sheltered as him, to put it lightly, basically. But also like that's more of like where the brother sister kind of vibe comes with them in this episode, and why I prefer that with them. But basically, it's just also more of a showcase of Tama showing her strength and power, but also, of course, Cherry, because she's just like, hey, this is the fun time. I get to deal with two people that just like to punch. This is my kind of day.
I see a little bit of the Bakugo in like the arm cannons. Maybe like I think Bakugo has some stripes on his shirt. Like,
yeah, so
like you
actually the stripes there. So first of all, Cherry is Russian, but the whole stripe thing is actually a reference to Adidas clothing, because she actually has this Glopnik motif to her, which is basically like a hobo lifestyle, which also adds more to Cherry's character. She basically had like a vagabond lifestyle and such, and part of that because like in Gopnik's, they really like some of the Adidas clothing style and stuff. And the color scheme specifically was based off of YouTuber Life of Boris, who I freaking love. I still love to this day. But yeah, so that's where a lot of her clothing and color inspiration comes from. And then later on, her latest design takes more of like a Angus from AC/DC, like the schoolboy outfit, basically, instead of just the suspenders and all that. The little buckles that she has with like the little screws in them. That was just more like, oh, that's a fun choice. I will say this. I'm a little bit upset because like her whole thing being like having. So I was working on her Yaga install. Unfortunately, another character in Devilman came out that had like a very similar ability, being a bomb lady and stuff. And originally I was going to have Cherry's Yaga install basically be like she pulls a pin around her, like around her collar and stuff like that. But that character, Riz, in Chainsaw Man already does that. And even though I came up with the idea before then, it was like she got more popular. I was like, I gotta change this. I don't want people thinking I'm just ripping off.
Everybody will say it. Oh, it's like that thing from that thing. Even if you did
first. I normally don't care about that. But also, it's like I didn't want people to think the exact same thing because they also had very similarities, like like having black hair, having the collar around their neck, and kind of not shorter clothing. You know what I mean? Like not like revealing clothing, but it had shorter clothing and things like that. I was just like, I don't want to cause this issue. So I was just like, okay. But your Yaga form is severely different from Riz's devil form for sure. But yeah.
All right. I want to jump ahead a little bit. So let's see. We talked about Baba Yaga. I think it would have been, we skipped ahead to talk about Highway Jack.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about Frankie, the fashionista, and getting together with?
Oh yeah. In this room already, there's a couple things. So first off, that little flag over there is where this Brazilian flag.
Yeah.
That's kind of where the whole thing started. Like a lot of people love her because she's part of Brazilian stuff. She's Afro-Brazilian. But then you have like the little stickers up there that says 8 and 29. That's actually the original numbers that Kevin Harvick was 29 and freaking Dale Earnhardt Jr. was number 8. Those were their original numbers, and those were the cars they were most known for. Was that number 8 red car for Dale Earnhardt Jr. and 29 for Kevin Harvick, and those are our favorite racers in our family. But that's also like something I added on there because I wanted to show more that Frankie really loves racing. She just loves it. I made that Speed Demon comment, but she loves cars, she loves racing and things like that. And in an earlier episode 5, you see that Dale Earnhardt car again, like as a big poster on the back in her lobby, basically. And I just wanted to add in little details like that because I just thought that'd be nice. Because you also see her being very fashionista. She's very, very sentimental. She's very polite and gentle, but also she likes those kind of things. Because also NASCAR is big down here, and my family is very big into NASCAR and things like that.
And as a comic artist, that's one of the great things about the medium is you have the opportunity to pepper some visual foreshadow. If you know your character, you have the opportunity to sneak in some artistic references anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I freaking love about doing. Can't speak today. Fucking can't speak.
Ooh. Oh, I know that vibe.
And then there's this scene where basically it's just like, the reveal, like Ironworks being like, wait, what the why are you blaming me, dude? And then the little tease at Monsoon before he's revealed and such. But things like that. And just more Sticks just being, just like, I know exactly what I'm doing, but he doesn't. And you just see more the little cracks in both Ironworks and Sticks like, wait a minute, something's about to happen. Something's not going to go too well. I feel like there's going to be a domestic.
The twist is great because basically the guy we think is just the hired mook, the slave, declares himself to be free, but is still going to kill the hero, right? So that's a great twist. Styx awakens, is nearly killed, but seems to awaken from his evil personality, and it's all set up here in this one in that one interaction. So you do twists, but you set up your twists so they feel earned later.
Yeah, I want to make sure about that because I know sometimes it's easy to just write a twist out of nowhere, and sometimes it can work or it doesn't. But I want to make sure I planted the seeds early on, especially like sometimes because I want to do that, but I also want to make sure it's ambiguous enough so that way, in case I don't do it immediately, it will turn out like make sense later on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this is the scene we talked about earlier where Ben's dumping on himself a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and Frank is just like, excuse me, no, don't do that.
But support, that's important. So she's not saying, this is what I love. She is a supportive person, which is something like Ben strikes me as kind of like a young, naive guy. That's the kind of guy who needs a supportive person, right? So you're walking. It really struck me because you're walking a careful line between her being just like, like mommy, nice girl, perfect waifu GF, and her being cold, right? She's neither of those things. So
but yeah, and that's important because like in order to be a supportive person, you can't just be like 100% nice all the time. You have to set it straight, you can't just you can't sugarcoat, the whole thing. Not gonna sugarcoat it, pew, stupid to me. But like for Frankie, she's not gonna sugarcoat it. Things are gonna get tough for Ben. She wants him to know that.
Yeah. And he's picked a hard path. He's picked a hard path for himself too. The straight and narrow.
And then that little Felita thing, that's a reference to a Marty Robbins song there and such. So on Frankie's backstory, which is not the full backstory.
Just hints of it so far.
Yeah. But yeah, that's just something that she was that's something that she's telling Ben to at least know where it comes. And I don't want to spoil everything and stuff, but you'll know what I mean. Like this is true to a certain point of view, basically. That's all I'll say.
We do know it's been revealed that her adopted father is at least knows Dr. Fleetwood and Dr. Styx. So there's some kind of connection between the older generation and the younger generation. We just haven't seen it get into detail on what that might be yet. I like that. So again, this is working in the sense that it's giving her an emotional, like a father figure in her life, and it's actually building up the supernatural, genius scientist subplot as well. So you're juggling a lot of balls, and I think you're doing a good job because we're getting more about the lore of the world and of Frankie as a person.
Yeah, that's also, and this is also another moment I like, because it's also Ben just saying, hey, you just kind of straight up asked me, because Frankie was just kind of doing a workaround way, even though she was trying to be nice to Ben, she was kind of working around admitting that she was wanting to be with Ben and such. And that's another moment Ben's just kind of like, hey, you could have just asked. You don't have to do all this and such, and you don't have to be this quick to it, but I'm interested in that kind of thing. Because I wanted to show both of them like they want to make this work, but also like, hey, just be careful about that. Like they'll be like, hey, no, do this kind of thing. Like they're trying to actually better each other. And I think that's very important.
And Ben's a straight enough shooter. I feel it makes sense for his character. Like it doesn't feel like, oh, I got to get them together. Boom, 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 boom. Like Ben strikes me as the type of guy who would just say, yeah, I'll take you on a date. Let's make this work. Right. It fits with what you've established about him thus far. All right. Yeah. Well, I still want that beach episode, and you dropped the lore that Frankie's a speed demon, so I'm going to be looking forward to that. Let's talk. Let's see here. Okay, this is just an incidental scene, right? Are we going to see more of Mermaid?
I really don't know. Originally, she was supposed to be. So, fun fact: this is a moment of real big stupidity. There's supposed to be a character that was supposed to happen before Highway Jack in this episode. It was supposed to be Texas Red, and he had this family of brothers. They were the Red Brothers and stuff like that. His literal name was Texas Red, which is based off of the Big Iron song.
Yep.
But anyway, and then I realized pretty quick, like, wait a minute, because I got the better idea of making Texas Red more of an actual villain for Ben, and you'll see more what I mean later on. But like, then I started realizing shit, I almost just wasted Texas Red for like a one-off character, and I would have been so pissed if I did that. It was just a moment of realizing I really dodged a bullet there. But she, Aqua is her actual name. Generic, I know, but basically she was based off of the song Cool Water a little bit by Marty Robbins as well. But I just wanted to have more like just a brief moment like the Little Mermaid girl and just show more about like the type of cryptids you'll see in the world and such.
You're adding flavor to the world, even if she doesn't get her own whole chapter. You're adding flavor and suggesting that Ben's going on a lot of adventures and meeting a lot of interesting people. You can always like bring her back and use her later. I think in Teen Titans, the writers to Teen Titans once said, you don't have to show the characters waking up in the morning. If you show a guy robbing a bank and the Teen Titans show up, the audience figures it out, right? And
that's what I want to
figure out. Yeah,
that's what I want to make sure of and stuff. Let's just have like little moments of that, so like people know, okay, Ben is being more known and he's actually doing more stuff, and then they'll see more of the effects triple down because at this point Ben's starting to become more known and stuff. He's doing little things like this, and as he said in this episode, some time has passed as well, so it's just a lot of things that change. And then Jack comes in and causes more chaos, and then later in the episode, if you want to skip ahead, then you get two new characters that pop up. You get Cameo and Mother Lycan, who have no affiliation with Styx and stuff, and they bring back up that Tycoon and Baze, and it's just like, oh shit. And it's like, now these guys are finally coming from the world like, yeah, this guy's doing stuff, we can't have that.
And you gave him the initial appearance, and then you gave him a chance to powwow with Ben a little bit, right?
Oh yeah, and I wanted early on to be like, oh, maybe these guys work for Styx, and then reveal, no, they don't. They're on their own volition here. They're on their own mission because they wanted to see what was going on here. They're here for both Ben and Jack, basically.
Yeah, you keep the audience guessing for a little bit, but not. What's nice about that is if you don't tell us soon enough, we start to say, okay, well, I guess they just must work for Styx, and then when the twist comes, oh, this is so metal. I can hurt myself to activate my power, shoot myself through the cheeks to activate the healing power. You're willing to go pretty like TV-14, you know, in some of your violence. And
I can go worse.
Yeah,
but the webs that won't allow me. Yeah, the whole maybe like if I speak, Twitter will suspend me and stuff. It's like if I make more violence, Webtoons will suspend me because there's that with a certain character that I'm bringing up. I got really dark there for a moment in episode 12 where like Rondo shows up and pops his character's head. That's probably the most graphic I've been, and I kind of want to go more, not because like I'm like, I love violence and stuff, but also because I want Ben to be really challenged and stuff. But it's hard to explain, but there's like with Rondo, he's definitely like the biggest challenge Ben's going to face for this series because I don't want to spoil it yet. I really don't, but you'll see what I mean. But
Book one collected episodes 1 through 5. Book 2 is going to collect episodes
6 through 11.
6 through 11. Okay.
And then the third volume will collect the rest of the episodes 12 through 17, basically.
Okay. I love this panel. Another example of bright symbolic color and a silhouette for.
No, yeah. And some of these panels like this is just literally because like I just want to make a panel real quick and stuff. Now it sounds like very lazy, but also it's just like it's working harder, not smarter. Working smarter, not harder. You know?
Yeah.
And then there's another scene that I love, which is just like very quiet moment of them just like getting ready to fight. And then
it reminded me of, maybe it's a direct inspiration. So that episode of Samurai Jack where he encounters the bounty hunters and there's like a little droplet of water dripping, and then the droplet of water dripping is used as a timing device. Yeah.
Yep. You're right on the money there. This is a very Samurai Jack inspired scene. Just like seeing the panel play out as just things start to drip out, like just time out, and then once the water drops, just goes full rush, basically.
Yep.
And then the next panel, you see like immediately Jack swings down his scythe, and then also Ben dodges to the side. They start clashing fists in hand, and then it starts getting really tense. I love this because it's just a nice moment of action that's really quick and to the point, but it happens all basically within one page. Well, 2 pages basically. Like there's a setup page, and then there's the next page where like these just go, just like rush.
I'll bring it up on Indiegogo because we can see the print version for contrast.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I do, and I am kind of like what would I call it? I am a print. I prefer print. Like I'll read webtoons, but I prefer print when I can get it, right? Because then in the print format, in the vertical format, you see it one scene at a time. In print, okay, this is great. So not only is each panel a moment, but you're also like shrinking the panel as you move from left to right. So there's this great movement from across the panels. The space is getting narrower, so it's getting tenser. The angling of the panels is suggesting Ben's movement forward and reinforcing Jack's movement forward. The big panels fill more space, and the small panels are related together. So it's sort of like big moment, quick moment, quick moment, quick moment. I always talk about how in page composition, it's sort of like doing rhythm in music. Every panel's a beat, and you want the beats collectively to build up to an interesting drum rhythm.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of like the beat going on here, because I want to make sure that it felt like, oh, this is a big intensity. It's like boom, and then it's like da 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 boom, like that kind of thing. Like the sound effects too, like you can hear like the whole fucking like with the stands fist clashing in like part 3, like with JoJo and the world and stuff like that. Just like the boom boom boom. Like it's not the full shotgun effect, but it's like them, but somewhat metal. You know what I mean? That's I can't speak to that, but that's it.
No, and I like the integration of kanji effects with Western effects, and
yeah, and then I dropped it partly because I started realizing it was getting a little bit too much, even though I enjoyed it. But then there were some people that were saying that it was kind of, I don't know how to say, but they were kind of saying like just choose one to the other, and I could get it sometimes, but like I was just kind of at the moment was just like I want to just focus on regular English onomatopoeia. I may bring back the katakana stuff, but who knows? But I do.
I mean, you don't just like plop down like a text effect. You're clearly drawing your onomatopoeia, which is it's a big pet peeve of mine if everything's hand drawn and then there's just like a Comic Sans sound effect plopped on top of it. The style of your letters fits with the feel of the action in these sequences.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. So I'm going to switch back to the main comic page. So what chapter?
We were still on episode 9, basically.
Okay. Yep. Episode 9, Highway to.
Yeah, we're basically finishing up that episode. We were in the fight, and then it progresses on to the next thing, which is the Soul Robber Inferno and the moment of like Fleetwood escaping with Mumsy and all that.
Yeah, talk about Mumsy a bit, because I actually saw her referenced in Freak of Nature Origins, and I think this is the first time we're
so originally so she was supposed to be a main character in that series, and then she kind of wasn't. And even in the pilot, which I'll release someday, but like she was revealed to be an important character for Ben to meet up with. I'm planning to do that again for Crips and Cowboys, but basically she is she is an Arabic woman, dead. She's a mummy, actual mummy. But she does have ties with a certain other character, and her power is she's actually telekinetic, essentially. She's based off of Lisa from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. You can probably see that. But she's a very elegant woman. She's also one of the very few characters that actually has long hair. But yeah, and also on her earring, you can actually see it's actually a specific type of cross. That's the Coptic cross, which is a sect of Christianity that has Middle Eastern ties and origins and such.
Yeah.
But there's that, and then you also see the Eye of Horus on her eye there. That also has important ties too, along with someone else who has Egyptian seemingly origins as well.
I like that, and I like how you they have an ethnic background, and you try to connect some maybe like visual motifs, or like their faith is somehow connected to their background. Earlier, you were talking about how it's dialects as well, so different dialects, different visual motifs. But
yeah, so
costuming.
But like also another thing, you can't tell because of how she speaks, but she actually has more of a proper British accent. Because even though she was born and she's Arabic, she actually was raised in England, which is actually a part of which is can't speak, but she was raised in England. So it kind of goes back to how England was very into like studying archaeology and like Egypt and things like that. It's another reference to the Mummy movies, like the remake one, not the remake one with Tom Cruise, but the ones like with Brendan Fraser and things like that. She's actually based off of Evelyn very heavily.
Yeah. Soul Robber Inferno. Okay, so this is the this is the conclusion of the fight
Mhm.
with Highway Jack.
Yeah.
I talked about this earlier. So this is where Ben, we sort of see his righteous anger at a guy like Highway Jack, and basically I didn't mention this before, but he just noticed that Highway Jack holds on to the pumpkin even though he wasn't close to hitting him, and that
Mhm.
puts two and two together that the pumpkin is a weak point. It's literally holding the souls that he's stolen in his body. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, Ben using his brain again, Ben hurting himself to activate his power. And okay, so the explanation here is that the holy power works on any kind of like maybe like dark, not necessarily satanic, but any kind of like dark spiritual force. Earlier,
Mhm.
he tries it and doesn't work. And what makes it work here is that Jack loses his containment, right? Like the head is what he uses to contain the souls. Without that, he's now vulnerable, right?
Yeah, because in traditional Dullahan lore, basically the heads, when they put on, they keep things in. The souls are basically within a hollowed out body, essentially. And because Ben knocked off the head and properly did the exorcism on him, all the souls are now fleeing from Jack's body. And originally, there was supposed to be a plot point where Jack's body actually got really skinny and frail. And there was supposed to be another plot point where, like, before he got a complete overall, it's basically he had like a female head, a head from a female dual Han that now attaches to him, and the body would actually shift and morph depending on the head that was attached to the body. But then I scrapped that because I wanted to just focus more on Jack. The female head was literally called Jill. It was a horrible pun to Jack and Jill. And she literally had a pail for a head. She was originally an ex-nurse that was killing people and stuff. Anyway, Pennsylvania.
Well, I like it, but
the Soul Robber
yeah.
shtick is a reference to the Capcom Nightmare Before Christmas. Yes, it basically is. It's another. Yeah, it really was. And since a fun fact: Jack's real name is Jack Elfman, which is a reference to Danny Elfman, who does soundtrack music, but also did a lot of the music for the Nightmare Before Christmas, and also did the vocals for Jack Skellington as well. So it just kind of all comes together. And then here's Mother Lycan's proper review introduction, where she sees Ben and all that stuff, and Ben's just like, "What the hell? What's going on?" And it's not like in a confused no one's way. He's just like, "You interrupted my fight. I had that all handled, and where did you come from?" Sort of thing.
Yeah, Ben is a very straightforward guy. He takes life as he finds it.
He's not okay. Oh, sorry.
Something about Mother Lycan is, I think in her next appearance, you referenced that she got her hair cut, and it's actually the same chapter where Toma dyes her hair. So, man, I want to make a tweak to the design. I'll have them get a haircut, right? And then by having the characters reference it, I don't know, it calls attention to they're reacting realistically to having a minor change of appearance in the lore. Yeah. All right, so I haven't seen too much of Mother Lycan and Cameo in action yet. Can we expect? I'm assuming we can expect more of them in episodes 12 through 16, right?
So, Mother Lycan's actually going to be different. She's actually going to be another one of those characters that actually gets redeemed proper. Slight spoilers, but everybody kind of knows it from reading my Twitter and stuff like that. But Cameo and Lycan are actually the Night Riders that they're part of actually references to classic Universal monsters. So Cameo is a reference to the Invisible Man. And Lycan is reference, to all the werewolves and stuff like that. But she's more so just like she has a lot of Norse themes. Originally, she was going to have a Norwegian accent, but I couldn't write that well, and I was worried that I was going to butch that. So she just kind of talks more normally. But she's from West Virginia, so if you want to give her like a West Virginia kind of accent, you probably could. But she just has a very tender voice to her. Cameo's Mexican, so he has a Spanish accent to him. Very much based off of characters like Indigo Montoya, Jetstream Sam, things like that. I can't speak today. Friggin' Antonio Banderas and stuff like that. Just that very Man in Black kind of character. From instead of a rapier and stuff, he has a sniper rifle. He's also based off of the very famous Finnish sniper White Death Simo Hire. But he's pretty much, Visible Man, sniper, and all that fun jazz. And then Baze wasn't based off anything. He was literally just like a henchman that I made and then tied into the Night Riders in order to bring more relevancy back to that tycoon he was talking about. Because admittedly, there wasn't a whole lot of ideas for the tycoon at first, and then until I finally got these other characters, Lycan and Cameo, I was like, okay, so what if there's like an actual tycoon, and developed him a little bit more. But anyway, but yeah, Cameo and Lycan are actually based off of like Shin and Noi from Dorohedoro. They have some very, in their terms of dynamics, they are very similar to them, especially with the size differences and such. Although Noi's not as bombastic and excited as Noi is. She's very tender and can be a very gentle giant and very happy. She's just kind of, but she's more like a peaceful dog. She's not like a stupid, happy golden retriever. She's just a very nice, calm, golden German Shepherd, basically. But
animal characteristics as a person, as a personality inspiration. Yeah.
Yeah. I honestly, I don't know what species. Like a lot of the werewolves later on, you'll see they have two common factors. They have like a gun name reference. Taylor's a reference to a form of manufacturer with the name Taylor, and also one of the band members of Duran Duran, which did the song "Hungry Like the Wolf," but her last name is a reference to Pat Benatar, which is more just about like the anyway. But the dog form she has is a werewolf. I didn't have a specific species for. It's just kind of like a golden wolf, really. But other werewolves and stuff have more dog species inspirations and stuff. Like there's a werewolf character that'll be in season C that's a Rougarou, and he has more of like a much drastically different werewolf appearance because he's more of a magic inspired werewolf and not like a genetically altered one. But I wanted to give him, but still details like that. I want to add more variety, especially if a character is a similar thing to another. And this is fun fact. So Paradox originally had like a completely different design that in episode 7 she was had like this Austrian accent. She was supposed to be Austrian of nationality, not like a normal American. And then I changed that because, like I said, it was a bit too similar to German, and I didn't want people to confuse the accents because I want to make sure everybody sounds unique for the most part. But then she just became more of like just became American. She still has like, I would say she has some Austrian heritage, but she's just more like a normal American girl. She's very much like a cat. It's kind of funny saying. But originally, she was supposed to be more like this black cat, Catwoman kind of character, more sultry. But then I was like, I just want to make her a gremlin instead. And that led to a lot more fun with her. Like the whole, this is before like people started getting really, like Neko arc got really popular. But the idea was still there, just making her more like an absolute gremlin. She was very small, very cute, and also very annoying in a spaz. Basically, like, how sometimes cats can be. But she's also based off more of like Wildcat instead of like a traditional cat, because I just wanted her to be more like a unique cat kind of character in that regard. Because sometimes when you see cats, they'll be based off of like domestic cats or something more like a tiger or lion. But I wanted to be her based off more like things like bobcats and lynxes and things like that.
Nice writing bit, by the way, that that Lynx notices Lycan notices that she's a cat, right? So hint, hint. There's something wolf-like about Lycan, and bringing back Barracuda. So you're bringing back familiar characters. You're introducing new characters. You're having them interact separate from Ben, making it clear. So this is where it becomes clear to anyone. Okay, I get it. So just because they're bounty hunters and they're not necessarily on Ben's side, that doesn't mean that they're copacetic with Styx's faction either. So you're keeping a straight through line for the reader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course Ben just only referring to Paradox as the cat. She hasn't had a name yet, but she's just had several appearances, just teleporting in and out before she finally gets her name proper dropped. And it's just one of those things. Like it's a little setup and stuff. And she's just teleporting in and out. And I much prefer this because originally she was supposed to be more like basically Cherry's personality before I gave Cherry that more brash and brazen and cocky personality. Originally that was supposed to be Paradox's personality, while Cherry's more like the weird, like a fucking Fujoshi kind of character. Not full Fujoshi, but like more yandere, not as like bold and brash. She's just more like just sits in the corner, just thinking about really stupid things that really dirty thoughts, and just being, just feeling like you know what I mean? Just being very weird and not just like very bold and brazen. I keep using it, but that's the best way to describe Cherry. Because while she has yandere tendency, she's much more just like friggin' like bold and just like, who the fuck are you kind of attitude about her. While Paradox is just more, has that kind of like a little LaMayo kind of personality to her. She just
goofy cat, not DC Marvel cat. Black Cat and Catwoman, I think, have roughly the same personality. They're slinky, sexy cats, and she Paradox is more playful. Okay, the great setup for her is there's that scene where Arachne basically comes out and takes over and asks if anyone wants to pull a coup, and Paradox's line is, "Well, I just work for Styx," right? Right? You can instantly tell. Oh, she's not quite down with the change of leadership here.
Oh no, yeah, that's all. Paradox is just very much like the low cat. She's just like she'll act very like high and mighty, but then she's just like, but then at the end of the day, she's very skittish. Basically, that's the best way to describe her. Like, I keep saying like actual cats, but like you said, you have your own cat. When you actually see cats, you know that like they're very manic sometimes. Like they could switch their personality on a dime. They're just very whoa, hey, or they're very just like indignant, but they're very they have a what's the word? They're temperamental, basically.
Yeah.
And they have the moment and say, "Okay, who the hell are you?" to the cat, and then she's just gone again. He's just like trying to figure it out, and then of course the big reveal: Styx. Styx is back, and he's just like, "Oh shit!" And that's the only time Ben is actually seriously sworn.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I got to call it out. The nice Les Miserables reference in his.
But yeah, that's been there for the whole time, basically. But yeah, I'm family. Like I said, my mom had a performing arts studio. Family, we've done a lot of acting and musical theater since like 2007 and such. So that's another part of my life that's deep into me is some of those music references. In fact, another reference you probably wouldn't guess that's actually in there a lot is doubt you've seen it, but musical Legally Blonde, which is actually one of my favorite musicals, but there's a lot of references to it within the series as well. And
I've seen it once. Like my sisters ate up Legally Blonde for.
Oh no, yeah, but it's honest, no joke. It's one of my favorite musicals, and Elle was one of my favorite female protagonists of all time. I'm no jokes, no memes. I fucking love it. And there's a lot of characters that in there that take some of the references to it, like Tama and Mother Liking more specifically. She's based off of Brooke Wyndham and also the actual actress that played her in the musical version, not the movie, but the musical version, Nikki Snelson, because we actually got to know her really well. So I based Liken more off of Nikki Snelson and stuff like that. So yeah, so that whole personality and the blonde hair and things like that were based off of Nikki. Obviously not the body type. Body type's drastically different, but still the whole idea of her being very loud and proud, happy, full of endorphins because she works out. I'm saying references that probably no one's going to hear. Sorry, but you know what I mean. But the musicals like that do actually also reference and influence the series as well. It's not just like regular music, but it's also musicals and things like that. Like you said, Les Miserables, but also Legally Blonde and other things like that. And in fact, there's a character that will appear later on that's actually based off Phantom of the Opera, and which is also both a universal monster and also a very iconic musical in that kind of culture and stuff. But anyway,
double whammy reference, yeah.
Basically, yeah.
Now you just got to work in a rock and roll or mythological reference into it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What's neat about the confrontation with Styx is he's been the big bad the whole time, and basically this whole fight turns the lore of the world on its head, where Styx is presumably going to be on a redemption arc. I do think later though we see like the Styx personality isn't entirely gone, right? Like both personalities still exist within him, or is the Styx personality completely destroyed in this exchange?
So in this exchange right here, like this one we're talking about, where he's talking about you're quite right to the verse 61, that's still what Styx is, but like near the end of this episode, it starts becoming obvious that the Styx personality is faltering. And and near the end, it's kind of interesting because you don't know if like whether or not the Styx personality is still there, if he's just using it as a ruse and stuff in order to get them out of there. Because immediately later on, episode 11, when he's talking to Paradox, he's back to normal Strizzle and stuff. But that's the kind of thing. It's like there's still some struggle going on in there, and that's actually where Styx is based off of Jekyll and Hyde as well. And that's like literally his name. The Styx personality is based off of the River of Death. But Drizel is actually Edward Drizel is actually a very stretchy pun based off of Yggdrasil.
Yggdrasil,
yeah.
And Ironworks, something you talked about in the character design notes for Ironworks is originally a lot more humanoid in design. I think you said you reused some of the humanoid aspects of that design for Barracuda. Later.
Yeah, so there was a much more actual human cyborg version of Ironworks whose personality and design, facial structure and stuff and body type was moved over into Barry. And so at one point he was just kind of like very boisterous and loud. but he wasn't necessarily 100% machine. But then that changed, of course, because I wanted to go more the machine route, where he's much more machine than man. And then that leads to this really great arc of him like gaining sentience and stuff, and starting to go on like fucking the HAL 3000 sort of arc,
And becoming more Aku, like more red, more spikes in his design from Big Mook to the new Big Bad. It's a good buildup, and your design is actually adjusting. So he's transforming. Ben has been increasing his power and training himself and developing himself. And Ironworks has literally been being ripped apart and put back together again multiple times, and having his appearance update throughout the series.
Yeah. And that also plays a little bit into like episode 14, which, like I said, I know you're not caught up, but like when you see it, you're like, oh man, like I don't know how to describe it because I don't want to spoil it too much, but it does lead into more of like different paths and stuff of like nurture versus nature and things like that. I'll say that. But then you have this moment of like the last straw for Ironworks. Like, are you fucking serious to sticks? Where he's just like, you're seriously changing your plan again and again.
Yeah.
And this is the moment of like really like the AI kind of is corrupted because of the nightmare fuel. And it's finally realizing like, I am better than you. I can do better than you, because the AI actually that he has is actually a learning AI that allows him to adapt and learn from different situations. Unfortunately, it wasn't able to properly show that early on, but basically that's the type of AI that he has that led to him actually gaining sentience, because it allows him to analyze and observe a situation in order to improve. Which, it's typically, how a lot of those AI go rogue stories begin, because they're like AI's programmed to adapt and understand situations. But it's still a good arc for that, for Ironworks twisting and changing allegiances and such.
Yeah, I really dug it. I think you even had like a commentary in the art that, hey man, big things are coming in the next chapter, and you set up my expectations, and then you completely fulfilled those expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about, so let's see, episode 11 is what will wrap up the print edition of book 2, correct?
Okay. Yeah.
So I guess how about let's talk a little bit about what you expect for future episodes. What will become the print for book 3, and then after we talk a bit about book 3, I'd like to talk about the Indiegogo campaign specifically and how people can help that. So, what's in the spoiler free? Or minor spoilers? What's in the future for Ben Young and the gang?
So basically, I'm trying to wrap up UIR. 17 is going to be the final episode, essentially. Not 17, 16 will be the final episode, essentially. Is it 16 or 17? I can't remember. But basically, I want to try to wrap up UIR soon and wrap that up pretty quick into a nice little bow. But basically, what's going to happen with Ben is, now that at the end of episode 11, Horror Show seems to be out of the map for a bit, but now they got to deal with the Night Riders and stuff. And this leads to Ben exploring the world more, trying to get more to doing bounty hunting himself in order to like gain some more money. But as he continues on there, he starts having these weird dreams and visions. After immediately what happens in episode 10, which is, if you want to reveal, you can, the source of his holy power. After immediately figuring out that source, something happens to Ben. He starts having these weird dreams and visions, like himself, but like stitched up in weird places that he's never been to before, people he's never met, and it's all weird. Like he doesn't know what's going on and stuff. Then he starts coming across trying to, continue on trying to find his grandpa, but then big detours happen, and he comes across not only a horrible revelation about himself, but also someone similar to him. In fact, 2 people similar to him, but one's more prominent in that regard, and starts realizing just more the scope, and ends up getting into a lot more danger than he would have expected. And not just because of a trial and everything, but like he has officially his back as a target now because of what happens. But yeah, that's what you can expect for the final few episodes. But basically, it's the culmination of Ben realizing his identity in the world and finally solidifying before we officially go into Crips and Cowboys. And in Crips and Cowboys, it's definitely going to be more of an ensemble cast type of story. It's not just Ben. Ben may be more the main focus, but you also have more about Tama and Hayes and other characters and stuff joining the ride. But Ben's story is coming to a close, essentially, from 3rd volume.
You've used the first 2 books to Ben's the protagonist, and we've met our secondary cast, and they've had some guest guest starring moments. And book 3, we're going to see the whole cast operating together, which I think that was something I wanted. I was I found myself hoping for more.
You'll see. So episodes 14, 14 kind of, it's already been doing that a little bit, but 15 and 16 are more of the episodes where you see more of the cast coming together, and you'll start seeing more where the gears are going to turn to what's going to happen in the next series, Crips and Cowboys. But you'll see them coming together. It's not just only going to be Ben, although Ben will have a very big moment, obviously, but it's going to be showing more of other characters and showing what they can do and just seeing where they're going to end up once Crips and Cowboys starts, essentially.
And we can talk a little bit about the big reveal of Ben's. You're the creator, so if you want to talk about the big reveal of Ben's power.
Let's go ahead and do the reveal of Ben's power and stuff. Since, like I said, this comic's already free to read and such. This is just more about like getting it to print for people to actually have in their hands physically. This is more
spoiler alert. Yeah,
so you get the spoiler if you haven't read it. So there's that. But I think it's a pretty cool thing to talk about at the very least, because it adds more to the whole faith thing, like I'm talking about. It adds more to the power system, and then opens up more possibilities of like when the world is going on here. But basically, once we get to it,
your character notes, I like the connection to Grendel and Beowulf, by the way. So Ironworks is his identity and appearance has updated significantly. So it's sort of like he's become a very different thing.
Basically, this is the big point where Ben, because so fun fact. So in the beginning of Beowulf's story, Beowulf fought a bunch of fish monsters. In episode 4, he fought Barry. And of course, the big point of Beowulf's story is him fighting against Grendel and this Great Hall and stuff, and using basically that kind of thing. And then there's 2 other parts of it, which is Ben fighting Beowulf's mother. There's 2 other parts of the Beowulf story, which is Beowulf fighting Grendel's mother, and then fighting the dragon. But you'll figure out more about what each is going to be once the final few episodes pop up. And you might already think about some of the connections, but yeah, basically, this story, Unbreakable Ranger, Ben's story, is mirroring a lot of the same beats of Beowulf, kind of like how Oh Brother, Where Art Thou takes inspiration from the Odyssey, essentially.
Yep. I like how you use webtoons to keep in touch with your followers, by the way.
I used to, and I need to get back to doing that more. I kind of stopped because I didn't want to be too spammy, and then Twitter became more my big update hub, essentially. But I want to try to do that more, especially since now Webtoon has this profile feature, which is actually really useful instead of just updating your web series in order to get people updated. So that's actually really nice. But yeah, and here's the big reveal of what Ben's power is a being inside of him, an angel. This is Phenomenon, Principality of Restoration.
Nice. So I think one of your commenters had this interesting comment. It wasn't Deus Ex Machina. It was Machina Ex Deus, right? So you have these Christian elements of the demonic and the light. You also have the robotic influence and the Western influence. So Phenomenon, when he appears, it is kind of like a divine figure appearing to Ben to explain something to him. So talk a bit about maybe the lore and why'd you go this route with the character?
So originally, Ben was supposed to always have like his ability be some sort of blessing, but then I was like, man, I don't know how to go about it. Interesting, but I was also wanting to try to do more stories with like angels and stuff, because we don't really get a lot of stories about angels and things like that, and that led to Phenomenon being the angel that said, Ben, there's a lot more stuff. Like, trust me, once some certain episodes come up, it gets more holy shit kind of moments. But basically, Phenomenon is an angel, but also, fun fact, in the hierarchy of angels, principalities are actually one of the lower ranked angels. They're above regular angels, but they're not anything like a powers or a throne or anything like that. They are more lower level, so that also gives you a good way. If you know your angel hierarchy stuff, you'd be like, oh, wow, he's a low ranked angel. It's like, oh, gosh, there might be other angels bigger than, more powerful than him, but he's already pretty powerful on his own with his restoration ability. But that sets more of like, it shows more stepping stones what's out there. I want to keep a mystery there, but it shows more of like what this world has and such, and leads to more possibilities and things like that. But Phenomenon originally was supposed to always have this mechanical design. There was actually a lot of different design works on trying to make his face, because I didn't know if I wanted to go like more stand, where it was like a mix between like looking like an actual face or mechanical, and then just went more full mechanical. His newer design, which shows up in episode 13 when he's more fixed after finally awakening inside of Ben, is much more sleek and based off of like the armor plating and Metal Gear Rising, but here it's a bit much more mechanical and hard. And there's a reason for that. His appearance actually shifts based upon the user that he's a part of. That's a part about angels and such. But it also gives you an indication that something like potentially like what happened to him, especially since you see him in this damaged state inside of Ben. And you see all these different design details. You see the coils and stuff. You see the electricity, and you start clicking together that, oh, that's cool. That so he's like a literal reservoir of holy energy and such. And this still applies when he's in his more updated form in episode 13, but he even takes on a more Western cowboy appearance like Ben by having on the new hat and such. But here he has a much more generic mecha super robo esque design here, and that's intentional because part of it is just because at the time I didn't have a full fledged idea what I wanted to do, and I just wanted to show this damaged robotic angel instead of Ben, and also to show a different design. Because some people either do angels like as very otherworldly or just basically human. I wanted to do a mix in between the two, so we could be like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Especially since this isn't anything we've seen before. Usually all robots we've seen have been from Styx or Fleetwood and stuff, or they're human. But this is something inside of Ben that's mechanical. What is going on here? That kind of thing.
And it fits with the vibe of UIR. So UIR, you have this mashup of the spiritual, the robotic, the Western, the Eastern, and so when he appears, this is a new lore drop for us. Essentially, we're figuring out what is the source of Ben's power, but Phenomenon fits in this world. A light force that is in contrast to maybe the more demonic Aku inspirations for Ironworks character, right? So it's not too big a lore twist, because we've known there's been the spiritual element behind the scenes throughout.
Yeah, but now you get more of like, oh, this is the actual payoff to it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and there's your April Fools.
Oh yeah, the stupid little April Fools thing there.
The way Unbreakable Iron Ranger was always meant to be Ram Ranch.
Yeah, I know. It was so stupid. It was a dumb pun. Like a lot of other people that I was friends with then were just doing like Yowie or like Yowie April Fool's thing. It was supposed to be just a dumb little gag, and that's it. And that's all it was. It was just a dumb joke. I didn't really have any time left. Like, there's even a Pickle Rick shirt on Ben.
Yeah, on Pickle. That nice. You cracked me up. You got me good.
But yeah, and then it leads to the big moment. I wish there was more to this big moment, because it's like I said, there's a lot of things I wish. But I wish I did more to this final moment where Ben basically has a better beatdown on Ironworks, but that didn't happen, unfortunately. But oh well, like I said, it's a I can't speak today. Like I said, at the end of the day, there's only so much you could do, but I'm still proud of this moment, especially the twist, because it was definitely like everybody was like talking about it, and I felt proud because this is the 10th episode, and I had managed to go on 10 episodes without a reboot or rework. So that was a very happy moment for me. Even with COVID going around at this time, it was still like I'm getting somewhere, essentially,
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, outfit update. So I like that. Outfit update corresponds with power increase for the protagonist. I didn't mention this earlier, but in the communication with Phenomenon, I liked how that switched to black and white. Again, you are consistently using different color palettes to communicate.
And unfortunately now it's all manga. Unfortunately now it's all manga and stuff. But the whole idea was like whenever Ben met Phenomenon or was communing with Phenomenon, it was always in a manga type setting because it was a much more ethereal place. But now because everything's all manga style and stuff, it's like, well, that's not there. I'll color it up and fix it so that's only the manga part there for when Volume 3 gets finalized and stuff. But so it's just kind of like, dang, I missed I really should keep doing the color. But that's the whole thing. Is like the manga style is meant for like a more ethereal place for Ben when he's talking with Phenomenon, because it's a more spiritual place because it's in his soul and such. That's the reason why I did it.
Currently black and white art for Volume 3 with potential color later down the road.
Yeah, basically that's what I'm working on. Like Volume 3 will have the proper coloring and such. But like I said, I changed the manga because in order to try to amp up production because of what was going on in real life with work and stuff. And that didn't always turn out well, but oh well. You do what you got to do. And I hope that can...
I mean, I have a similar temptation where, color is one of the longest parts of my process. If only if it was all in black and white, I'd be going so much faster, but color can be used so symbolically. And that's one of the things that's most striking about UIR is the symbolic use of color throughout. So, I mean, I don't mind focusing on the black and white art first to, ramp up the production, but I would look forward to the color edition. Definitely. Have you considered doing a pure black and white edition for like manga diehards maybe in like the small tankobon format?
Well, Crips and Cowboys is going to be that basically. That's going to be the more pure manga tankobon route, and we'll have some colored pages and stuff. But that's going to be the pure tankobon route is Crips and Cowboys because I want to make that more full time. This is more the passion project I can do in like an omnibus, but Crips and Cowboys is the more long haul series essentially.
Yeah. Okay, talk a little bit about what will Crips and Cowboys be about? Because I've seen references to that in your notes, but I haven't read it yet.
So basically, it's more just like the full Western series for Unbreakable Iron Ranger. Like it's exploring more of the world itself and like what's going on with it. Ben just exploring it more with his friends, and I can't speak today. But it's also him more finally catching up, trying to figure out what his grandpa is, but also discovering more about like what happens after certain episodes. I can't spoil it, but basically just learning more about something else, that why he has phenomena inside of him, things like that. I'll say it like that, as well as other characters wrapping up their resolutions and things like that. Like Tama trying to find her dad. Hayes is now working for an organization called the USC. You also have other characters that are joining in along, and you'll see more about Jack and his backstory, as well as who he's working for. Because in episode 12, you see Jack reuniting, not intentionally, but with this long black train, and you're wondering, who the heck is that going to be? You're going to see more of them. And you'll see the horror show rise up again through Arachne as the new leader, more of the gremlins. It's just more of exploration of the world, and it's just more like a fun, wild Western, a la One Piece, where you're just seeing Ben travel around the world of the cryptid underbelly, and also trying to clear his name, find out how phenomena got inside of him and all that fun jazz. It's basically just more of an exploration of the world.
I want to find Simp Highway Jack. We have to look at Simp Highway Jack. There's no way to skip that. Concept. Okay, more concept art.
I was trying to add more concept episodes there. Yeah, unfortunately, that didn't work.
Yeah, because you put all this consideration into it. You might as well talk about how all of this has impacted your work. Oh no, I went to episode 11. Did I skip? Did I skip?
That was the first. No. You skipped over the first part, but you're actually about to hit the Simp Jack face part.
Simp Jack. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay. No, you were still there. You were still there. You go back. Go back.
All right.
Yeah, you were on the right.
Almost there. All right.
You're on the right page. You were on the right part.
Okay, yeah, because the later when you did the joke, it was referencing people's reaction to this scene, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah. But yeah, and then you see more about this whole thing as well. Because also, I was like, I liked Rockney being older, but I was also like, I want to make her younger and just short. Because this is also like, I was just mean like, haha, everybody has short hair, but also it's just trying to make more Rockney more present and such. But now, like, you see more of like her actual ability, how much she has more mastery over Nightmare Fuel compared to Styx and stuff. It's another form of evolution, and just things like that. Just more of the world changing and seeing how things really play out.
Yeah.
And then you see Jack just like nodding his head, just like, yeah. Everyone else is like, ugh. And then he's just like, yeah.
Nice. All right, I'm going to switch over to the Indiegogo because I just want to emphasize this. So while I'm switching over, so in the description to this live stream, I have the links to the webtoon if you want to read the webtoon version for yourself. We've already talked a little bit about how the print edition has some updated art. We talked a little bit about how the panels are arranged in page format. So. Book 1 and Book 2. If you missed the campaign for Book 1, you've got. I love how you set this up. So you got the PDF for Book 1, you got the PDF for Book 2. Nice, affordable, jumping on price for people who can't. They don't have a summer job or anything. All right, physical print editions, and also some higher tiers where you can get some cool things like shirts, posters, and stickers. I even like that you did like an economical option. Which one was it? Like I ended up going for the phenomenal set where, oh, hey, that's a good deal. The Unbreakable set's 60, the phenomenal set's 100. Basically can save $20 if I get two copies of the books and everything. Right.
Yeah.
So that was a nice little setup. You are at almost 5,000.
Well, actually, now we're at 5,000. Actually, you just refresh and you'll see.
I want to see that. Maybe we did that. Did it just come through?
Yeah, basically, a couple of people donated through the stream, so that's honestly really good. But yeah, we gotten
awesome.
But we've gotten now officially over 5,000, so it's literally just 3,000 left. Hopefully, that all comes in within the next remaining days, but only time will tell.
Yeah, I noticed you've been doing some guerrilla campaigning at the manga section of your local library. So
we've yet to see if that actually works.
Yeah. So something I tell people to do is, sometimes I have like a lot of younger viewers. So it's like oh man, I don't have $25, mom and dad won't give me the credit card. Like it even helps just to check out the campaign and tweet it, share it, right? Like I think you've talked about this a little bit when you try to talk about Unbreakable Iron Ranger on Twitter, Twitter loves the tomboy memes. It doesn't necessarily like when you try to actually talk about your actual campaign and your project.
It's just how it is. Unfortunately, it's not even just because of the series itself. It's just how the way the algorithm caters to like promotion stuff. It's just ridiculous. But anyway, like I said, hopefully things change. It's definitely different from like 2020 when I did my first campaign. So if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But if you want to support it. That's all I ask.
I know that the Sporkman Studios, they've found it helpful to like ask Indiegogo for an extension. Like if you're really close, I think Indiegogo.
I already did, and this has been the second extension, and now we're finally getting stuff in, but still.
All right, so I want to get you across I want to see you get across the finish line. Would some people I've seen if the first take fails, they'll maybe wait a bit and come back again and hammer the marketing harder. Would you consider that?
Possibly, but also I feel like if I'm not going to make it here, I might as well just wait till the series is fully complete, since it's getting pretty close to that point, and then do the campaign again sometime next year, if I'm being honest. And that sounds like, oh, why are you waiting that long? But it's just like, I'm already so close to finishing up the series. I might as well wait for the omnibus edition instead. You know what I mean?
Okay. I feel like I still want to see you get across the finish line for celebration, running around cheering the street.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Yeah. Typically near the end of a campaign, that's also when people start, oh shit moment, and start backing it because they were either late, they were waiting to see if it'll work or not. That's typically what happens. Like either you're going to get most of your campaign money during the beginning and the end of it. So we'll see.
Yeah, and you got a lot of great feedback in my chat, by the way. Like Jonius and Abigail were really impressed by the work. Thank you for joining. So yeah, I really appreciated hearing the feedback from commenters on just like how, just looking at the art and knowing nothing else about it, it jumps out at you and grabs your attention. That's something I noticed while reading it. That's something that stood out to the commenters. So by all means, everybody in the chat, please check out the webtoons. Zach, your Twitter is Deputy Rust Art. Do you have other art sites you'd like to send people to, Instagram, anything like that?
Unfortunately, not really at the moment. I got set, not that set up, but like I got to just utilize those more. I mainly just use my Twitter for everything at this point. I'm trying to do more stuff, like more YouTube stuff. But yeah, at the moment, it's just only Twitter, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
And and that's a good format. It doesn't hurt to focus on one. And you also have a channel. Sounds like you do gaming live streams, things like that. Do you ever do like art time lapses of your process?
Honestly, no. I probably should do that, but it's mainly just been me doing shit post videos and things like that. Like it's literally stupid shit.
TikTok's the home. Free tip. TikTok's the home for shit posts.
Yeah, I used to do that, but then I stopped. I just kind of stopped doing it. I like doing longer shit posts as well. So that's kind of like why I do on my YouTube channel. Basically, it's just like dumb, stupid things like that. But yeah.
All right. Do you want to say anything about UIR that we haven't had a chance to dive into yet?
I'm trying to think, because we talked very more than I thought. Not in me way, but like more than I thought we would. The only thing I'm going to say left is basically this has been like I said a couple times. This has been a very personal project, and at the end of the day, that's what I'm trying to treat this as. Maybe I should try to focus more on like making it more a financial thing. and kind of this time it is. I was trying to do this to save up some money. Like some of the funding money was going to actually go back to me because the first one didn't really make a whole lot. On the first one, like breaking you. I mean, I broke even where I could actually like get the books back, but like I didn't make a whole lot off of it, like as a monetary thing. It was purely just to make sure people could actually get the books because there's a problem with a lot of Indiegogos, partly due to stuff like Comicsgate, Anti-Comicsgate, things like that, where there's a lot of books they're just publishing because they're trying to cater to people, culture war stuff, either to spite or to make fun of the other people instead of actually producing content. And people are supporting the comics, but not because of actual artistic creative. It's because they just want to spite or support people just because. And then you got people that are trying to scam others through comics like that. And so when I first did it, and even now, I don't want people thinking I'm scamming them. That's why I waited to make sure I had enough content to warrant doing this. Which
yeah,
I guess
and you delivered. I hear horror stories about 4 years, and the guy is just joking about how I'm never finishing this comic. Too bad.
I'm not trying to. I'm going to say this here, but like there's one guy that I supported on Indiegogo, and I ordered the original comic. So I thought like the original comic and the new one. So I not the original. I ordered the original ones, not the newer one he did. I just ordered the original ones for catch up. And you would think, well, because these were already printed before in a previous campaign, these should be pretty easy to get and print and be sent to my way. It took me a year to get those. It was ridiculous. And like when I got them, it was basically just like 2 small issues and stuff that, well, not awful, but it was just kind of like, why it took me this long to just get like 2 single issues when I probably should have just gotten all 4 of them and then had more content. But I waited like a year for already made content to arrive at my footstep. And meanwhile, this was like I ordered it right as I did my campaign. So this was like in 2020. I got this literally early this year because the comics were supposed to go out like in 2021, like in the winter of that. That's what the timeline was. And I was already getting other comics and stuff that I supported through Indiegogo and stuff way before that. But they also made sense with their timelines and stuff, depending on the size. But like the other one I got, it just took like a year. And I kind of forgot about it. And then it finally came out. I was like, wait a minute. I ordered this like in 2020. Why did this take so long? It was very infuriating. It's just, like I said. And I also understand. Also, we're in a little bit of a recession. So I do understand not everyone's wanting to back this, especially with, like I said, the problem is because of how Indiegogo specific has been used, I probably should just switch up to using Kickstarter potentially for future stuff. But there's definitely been a slight stain with some comics and stuff on Indiegogo because of all the scams that have happened on here sometimes, and just how people use like indie comics more for like, we're going to spike the big 2 instead of actually promoting smaller artists and stuff or indie artists and things like that. It's very infuriating. And maybe this Indiegogo doesn't work out. And if it doesn't, that's fine. I would love the support. So if you enjoy the book, please do. Also, if you want an actual version of the final print version, there's one of episode 6, like the full episode 6 in its print format with touched up art that you can save as a PDF as a test. And you can even show it around to other people. It has a QR code back to the Indiegogo. So if they like it, they can support the campaign. So I would highly recommend if you would please just spread this around, especially since we're reaching the final days. This, like I said, even though I want to try to make some more money off of it, this is more of just trying to get the book out to people who enjoy this series and not so much just trying to scam people. Like I said, I only make these campaigns when I know I have enough content. Originally, this was supposed to be earlier this year, but then a lot of stupid shit happened in my life, like car crashing, losing my first job, and then, first job outside my family studio, but losing my job because of circumstances that weren't because of me, but because of just corporate stuff. And Jill finally just happened, but I feel like it's just bad time. But still, if you want to support it, please support it. That's all I ask.
Here's the thing. You waited until the comic was done to do the crowdfund, right? Like there are people who they'll say, "Oh no, I lost my job and everything's awful," and they're 2 years late, right? But you did the work first, so that that when bad things happen in life, that's not derailing. That's not derailing the project for everybody. So you got your first book out. I loved your first book. I love the webtoons. If people are on the fence, just check out the webtoons and share that. Check out the PDFs if the full book would break the bank. But I love Unbreakable Iron Ranger. I love what you're doing artistically in both in the narrative and in the visuals for it.
Mhm.
So this is a great indie project, and I just hope we can get more people on it. So thank you so much, Deputy. I really loved getting the chance to hear your insight on your creative decisions for this work. So I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, thank you, man. It really means a lot. I'm glad we could do this.
Yeah.
So thank you. And to everybody that's here, no matter how many people are here, thank you, Elise, for coming in to see it. I hope you enjoy the series and you actually consider supporting it. Otherwise, thank y'all for having me.
Links in the description. And thanks to our chat. All right. I think that's a good wrapping up point. So we're going to say goodnight. Good night, everybody.
All right. Night, everybody. See you later. God bless.